Thank you very much for coming. This is an event which we've worked hard to put on over the last couple of years. We're supposed to be on another venue, but we finally found a home in the Irish Centre. A great place. I've put something on here recently, and it's a great little setup. And you know, the people here believe in putting on, you know, different things from the community. So it's great to be able to do this. A little story about how we got to this stage. The book From Dialogues to Monologues wasn't a book originally. It was a script sitting in Arthur Mackenzie's drawer, and I've known Arthur for just short of 38 years now. 38 years ago I played the Lord Mayor in one of Arthur's plays called Exclusive. Since then I've gone on to do another couple of plays for Arthur in different times, but we hadn't seen each other like a lot of people hadn't in lockdown, and I gave Arthur a ring and said, can I come up and see you? Went up, I had a cup of tea and had a couple of biscuits, as you often do when you sit with Arthur, and said, what have you got? What have you been up to? And he said, I've been busy. During lockdown, he started writing more, writing a lot of plays, which Arthur does, but he's also doing a bit of painting as well, which was fantastic. And that's how we got through lockdown. He'd also had the awful news that his good lady had been diagnosed with dementia. And he was very keen to put something back and help the dementia charities in the northeast, because he'd received so much help from the nurses. With this particular project that you're going to hear tonight and perform tonight by some great actresses, all very good friends of mine and people who've given up their time for free tonight, the monologues are all written for his wife. That was the whole point. It was very therapeutic. It was trauma, and Arthur will tell you a little bit about that. But with this particular script book, I've got a publishing company. I said, Arthur, why don't I publish that, and why don't we give the funds to a dementia charity? He said, that's a great idea. So I started looking on the internet, trying to find a dementia charity that'd be up for it. We found one called Dementia Matters at Brunswick, and that's what we did. But the one problem I had as a publishing company was the author wanted to be anonymous. Arthur didn't want his name attached to the book. He wanted to do it anonymously and donate the money anonymously. So I agreed to that, and we brought the book out, which is available on sale tonight, priced at £10. So hopefully some of you will buy this later on. I'm sure Arthur will sign it. But that was it. We produced 200 of these, priced at a tenner. Arthur not only wrote the monologues in here, but he also did the artwork for the front and for the back of the book. It's a lovely little keepsake from one of the best writers that the Northeast has ever produced, but also one of the writers that is probably not given any credit in the Northeast, which is why myself and Michael McNally, who's here tonight, is often championed him, because we respect him and we've got a lot of love for the bloke, and his work is, for me, it's up there with some of the greatest playwrights that this region's ever produced. So that's what tonight's all about. The monologues that are in this book are all for women. The reason Arthur did that is because he feels he writes well for women, but he also says there's a lack of monologues for women, which is true. It is very true. So that's why we did it. We raised some money for Dementia Matters, and then sadly, due to COVID and lockdown, Dementia Matters went out of business. And I had done a lot for them. Joe Allen, who's just come in tonight, who is a former centre forward for Newcastle United, he's an ambassador for them, and we were ambassadors for Dementia Matters. We ended up getting so involved that we ended up raising money for them, but it wasn't enough. They went out of business. So because of that, the former CEO then introduced us to the people from Age Uk North Tyneside. They put us in touch with a lovely lady who I'll introduce you to in a minute, called Sonia Rowe. Sonia said, I'd be delighted to have you involved. We went through to meet her. She showed us around the centre, and that's why we're here again now, because, you know, Joe and I said, yes, we'll take it on. So for the last couple of years, we've been raising money for Age Uk North Tyneside as ambassadors. So that's it in a nutshell. Your money tonight, everything goes towards the charity. All the ticket money that you've spent goes towards the charity. The raffle money tonight goes towards the charity. None of us are getting paid. We're all doing it for free, and we're hoping if you buy a few books, we'll be able to add a little bit more to the kitty. But first half will be a few monologues, then we'll have a little break, 20-minute break, chance for you to go to the bar, go to the toilet, whatever. We'll do a second raffle then, and then we'll be performing 2. So there's 3 in the first half, 2 in the second half. But it's great. You'll have a great night. You'll have a great laugh. This is the first time they've ever been performed live. It is being filmed for posterity, for Arthur and for the girls as well. The ladies are going to have something for their show reel and a chance to look back on it. hopefully, you know, you'll enjoy it tonight. But I will hand you over to Sonia Rowe from Age UK North Tyneside.
Thank you, Steve. He's pretty much said what I was going to tell you guys in the audience tonight. I'll just give you a little bit of background about us, Age UK North Tyneside. We're a local independent charity. We've been around for over 50 years. We're based in North Shields. We cover the whole of North Tyneside, and we also just opened a service, a dementia-specific service in Newcastle. A couple of the services that we offer that I think will probably resonate with the audience tonight. We all know we're living in a cost of living crisis, fuel crisis, energy crisis. Last year, my very small team of information advice providers managed to raise £1.82 million for all the people in North Tyneside to help boost their income, if you like, to keep them, if you like, from not having to worry about either heating or eating. It's a really small team and they do amazing work. I can't tell you how fantastic they are. I've got another amazing team in North Tyneside and in Newcastle. They're called Dementia Connection Service. They provide activities not just for the person living with dementia, but also for the carer of that person. We've got what are known as Admiral nurses who support the carer with their emotional needs, coping mechanisms, sometimes de-escalation techniques. I've got one of my Admiral nurses here today, Tracy. She's an absolute walking angel, I have to say. I've also got a couple of my other team. I've got Suzanne here and Helen. They provide support services to people who are living with dementia. We're absolutely determined that people who have a dementia diagnosis continue to live well. What Steve allows us to do is reach a different audience, predominantly mostly a male audience. They're the people who don't reach out to us. It's always the women who pick up the phone and ask for help. Your audiences are generally male dominated. Certainly tomorrow's is like to be a male dominated audience as well. It gives me a platform and an opportunity to speak to people who wouldn't know we exist, and they might remember who we are when they need us. So with huge thanks to Steve and to Joe there at the back for all the work they've done over the last 18 months, 2 years. We've raised about £13,500 so far. That money is ring-fenced and supports people living with dementia, and it makes a massive difference, I can't tell you. Suzanne takes people out on day trips. We buy them little treats, fridge freezer the other day for their lollies, things like this. It's tiny little things, but they make a huge difference, I can't tell you. So thanks to you guys for turning out tonight and supporting us. Huge thanks to Steve and obviously to Joe and all the actors giving up their time tonight. Thank you ever so much, especially to our wonderful gentleman here. Would you come up, Arthur, and say a few words? Thank you very
much. Yes, go on, mate. On there. That's it.
I've got 30 years. Alex, not keep you long. I was going to start with something and I thought, no, I'll change it. You know, if you buy a coconut, you hope you get some milk in it. Well, this coconut has got ideas in it, and they're jumping at us all the time. And when my wife Irene was diagnosed with dementia and we were locked in, I had to make sure that I was diverted in certain ways. So I started writing these monologues, and I read them to her, and that was when she could appreciate them, she could understand them, and maybe excite her a bit and stimulate her. And I just stuck them in the drawer. So you heard the story from Steve. The story just snowballed once I met him, and it just went on from now. We've got people listening to these monologues. Well, they're any good or not, well, they couldn't even say. But I just want to welcome everybody here. It's, for me, personally, is this sort of, not a tribute, but it's probably right.
Yeah.
Well, it was just like in the pictures. I can't believe it happened. I really can't. I mean, you don't expect a day to happen in places like this. Blue tits taking the top off the milk. Well, that's about the most exciting thing that ever happens around here. Of course, there was that bit of shrapnel which fell on number 19 during the war, which Mrs. Croxdale keeps in her china cabinet. And then there was the pig that was slaughtered on Bluebell Meadow. Well, they never got anybody for that, oh no. But we all suspected when the local social club started selling pork sandwiches. But a robber in the post office. Well, it was all over in seconds, you know, but it seemed to go on forever, like in slow motion. It was unbelievable. It doesn't give you time to think. You just sort of do things automatically. And then, well, that stand with the greeting cards, that was the saving grace. And to think, I resisted putting it there. But Mr. Fox, well, he was very persuasive. He welded the rack together himself from an old bed frame, and it was far too heavy and cumbersome. But the cards, well, they were made by his daughter. And to be fair, we have sold a few. Well, especially the drawings of Buttercup Lane. Very naive and honest in crayon. It just goes to show you never know what's round the corner, do you? And the robber, well, he certainly didn't, because he tripped over it and he knocked himself out. I sprained this. Well, old Mr. Fowler, well, he'd come in for his pension and he tied the robber up with sellotape and I helped him. Well, it was my fault because I tried to lift the rack off the robber. Sellotape. Well, it was the only thing we had to hand, and Mr. Fowler used to be a scoutmaster, so he knew exactly how to wrap him. Well, at the same time, sort of pushing his crotch into his unmentionables, which worried me because he'd just come out of hospital with a hip replacement. Anyway, the police, well, they took him away with the rest of the roll, well, still sort of hanging from him. It was that industrial wide stuff, you know, you need a special knife to cut it, your teeth are just no good. The sergeant said that man, he'd been doing nasty things all over the place and was putting me and Mr. Fowler in for a certificate. The Tribune took with orders. Me and Mr. Fowler invited to the round table next month for a ham supper celebration. Oh, who'd have believed it, eh? I haven't been able to sleep since it happened. My husband, our Bob, well, a fat lot of good, said, the way the post office treat you, you should have let him take the money. But Bob, well, he just doesn't understand. He just doesn't. In fact, he's always telling me to pack it in. Over my dead body. I promised Dad when he retired I'd carry on the family tradition, and as God made little apples, I'll keep that promise. More to the point, Bob knew that when he married me. Anyway, it was a quiet morning and the robber must have known the movements. I think it's called casing the joint. Well, he'd obviously cased it properly because the pension money had been delivered, and I was expecting a rush. I saw the instant the bell rang. Ooh, I knew he was a nasty bit of work. He really was. Long, dirty hair. About 25 with a spider's web tattooed on his face. Luckily, I was behind the screen because he just shouted, "Give us your effing money!" And he ran at the screen, hit it with a hammer. But it just bounced off because it was that reinforced stuff, you know. He was like a madman, screaming and smashing into the glass. It was terrifying. His language was horrible and his eyes, well, they were sticking out like organ stops. Then he ran to the side of the counter to try to get in behind, and he crashed into the card stand, knocking himself out, just as the bell went and Mr. Fowler came in. Well, I was glad to see him, and quick as a flash he shouted, "Sellotape!" Mr. Fowler said, that hammer's called a whole breen hammer. Oh, it's the same kind, well, the Yorkshire Ripper used to kill all them women. Oh, God. When you think about it, I've been dead lucky, I really have. But I don't understand why the sergeant never took it away. So anyway, I've put it in a plastic bag in the safe just in case. Well, it's another 25 minutes now before I open and the rush starts. Because you see, I haven't been able to pay the pensions because we're being closed. But nobody's really complained, mind you, because, well, they knew the circumstances, didn't they? Well, all except Mrs. Grant, who always seems to be looking for an argument. Complains about everything, that one. And when there's nothing to claim about, well, she goes on about the dark nights or the smell of Lacey's farm. I wouldn't care, you know. She's got pots of money, her. She's rolling in it, been married twice, both times to older men who by sheer accident work in a bank. Now, if I had a nasty mind, I could think the worst when they died suddenly, but I don't. Her airs and graces are nobody's business. But the body odour when she gets near to you, well, it's enough to make your eyes water. How the hell she married twice, I'll never know. But there again, you don't know men. You don't know what other hidden qualities she might have had. Well, anyway, I've worked in here since I was 10. It started when I helped Dad load up the fruit and vegetables in his old Volvo estate. Oh, I loved selling stuff and meeting people. And often he would let me sit behind the cage on the post office side. And from then, I knew, well, that was what I wanted to do. So when I left school, it was sort of natural, really. Mum wasn't too sure and thought, well, I should try something different. She wanted me to be a nurse like her sister Alice. See the world, she said. I even went along to the nursing home where she worked. But it was depressing, seeing all those old people playing dominoes and doing exercises with tins of peas. Oh. And then there was a whiff of disinfectant, you know, and wee. Even though there was bunches of flowers everywhere, you could still smell it. The building, well, it was an old country house with beautiful gardens, and even though I liked helping people, bedpans and wrapping running saws, no, it was definitely not for me. Don't get me wrong now, I like old people, they are wonderful. They're the main customers here actually. They give me all the gossip. So I reckon I'm doing my bit just as well as I would have in that home. You know, really, this post office, it's the hub of the community. Then a couple of years ago, I applied to the council to turn the small back room where we used to sell the fruit and veg into a coffee shop. Well, the locals, they were all for it, except that woman Grant, who objected, saying it would pollute the ozone layer and encourage dangerous car parking. I don't think the council really took much heed, but they turned it down anyway on health and safety grounds, as I'd have to install toilets and washing facilities. It was going to be far too expensive and more trouble than it was worth, really, so that was that. I also don't think Bob was best pleased. He didn't say as much, but, you know, I could tell his mood. Then the day I barely got the council letter out of the envelope, that Grant woman came in, smug as you like she was, and she said, well, we should be satisfied with what we have instead of trying to go above our station. The cheeky cow. And that's being cruel to cows. There's always one fly in the wood pile, isn't there? That robbery, though, that's really put us on the map. Oh, yes, it has. The letters, the phone calls I've had, they've been wonderful. I suppose it's at times like this when you find out about people and how nice they really are. I'm very proud of what Mr. Fowler and I did. And a special thank you to Mr. Fox and his card stand, I do have to say. Apparently his daughter is going to draw a set of commemorative cards about it. I can't wait to see what she comes up with. Anyway, I'll stop going on about the robbery. It's just, well, I can't help it. In fact, it's really getting on Bob's nerves now. And he shouted at me this morning and he stormed out of the house without eating his porridge. I've noticed recently that he's getting very sort of edgy with me, and he started smoking them filthy vape things again. Smoke billowing everywhere, and oh, I can't stand it. I haven't done anything wrong that I know of, and if I have, well, I'm certainly not doing it purposely. I can understand some of his edginess in a way because he's been getting very riled up at work recently. He's an AA motor patrol, a very taxing and responsible job, which he takes very seriously because, well, he likes engines. But a month ago, a new young supervisor arrived from down south who apparently has more letters after his name than the King of Siam, and he's on Bob's back all the time. Bob always makes sure people who break down are getting the best possible service as they're paying for it. But this new supervisor is forever telling him he's taking way too long on repairs, that he should be chopping the time down and only doing the minimum to get things moving. So he's available for another job. But you'll tell you, Bob won't. He cut corners. No, he won't, because he's a perfectionist. Oh, he even puts soap in his jeans to get sharper creases. He drives me crazy because he insists on using the sink instead of the dishwasher, and he scrubs the plate that hard. I'm sure one of these days he'll wear the pattern off them. That started as a standing joke, but even that's wearing thin now, a bit like the plates. And while I try to please him by buying the odd Tesco meal for two, you know, and a bottle of wine to surprise him, it's sort of if his mind is just elsewhere. His pride and joy is his Norton 250 motorbike, which fills the garage. You'd think he'd given birth to it, polishing it like a diamond, only taking it out on fine weather. He spends most nights and weekends in there doing goodness knows what. And he doesn't even ask me to bring the odd cup of tea now. He's moved a kettle and a toaster in. I told him he should have married that bloody bike, but he says, well, you married the post office long before you met me. And I really can't argue with that because, yes, it is my life. Oh, we still get on, you know. But it's almost as if we're different people to the ones, you know, that smile out of our wedding photograph. And there's little ones. Very difficult. Well, let's just leave that. Time seems to be dragging, you know, after all that excitement. Not that I want another robbery, right? No, of course not. God, no. But it's spoiled things. It's made me realise just how boring it is round here. And how really small my life has been. Same old, and for a few hours, Mr. Foster and I, well, our hearts were pumping. We felt alive. You know, properly alive. Yeah. Spoiled things, all right. I must admit, you know, that feeling, it was something special, something really different, and something I've never had with Bob. Oh, our wedding was wonderful, of course, and I was excited about it. I even lost a stone so I could fit into that wedding dress. But after a few days, it was just like we suddenly became strangers. Life just suddenly got flat. Obviously, there was going to be an anti-climax after the big build-up, but you'd expect it to last longer than a few weeks, wouldn't you? You just would. We planned to tour Scotland on his Vespa for our honeymoon, but it fizzled out. The engine broke down in Otterburn, and even with his expertise on engines, he couldn't fix it. So we were stuck getting on buses to stay in bed and breakfast, and the weather was terrible. The garage where we left the Vespa said, well, it needed a new engine, and not having anything, we just told him to keep it as scrap. Coming home, we were living in the spare room with my parents above the post office. It just didn't work out. Mum and Dad, of course, well, they were terrific, and we never had any rows. But I know that Bob having a bath every day because he came back covered in oil and using all the towels, well, got under their skin. He worked in a poky little garage getting peanuts, and I looked after the post office as a way of repaying my parents for our bed and board. What goes on behind closed doors, eh? And I'm sure Bob, he's always resented me as being the breadwinner. I've tried telling him what's mine is his, a partnership, but I can't get it through. Don't get us wrong. I mean, I wouldn't say we were unhappy. We just rub along together, him with his Norton and me in here. Oh. Sometimes you have to deal with the hand you're dealt. But we've always got bread on the table. We can go out for an Italian if we want, and we don't have any debt. We're beholden to no one, and thanks very much to Mum and Dad who left me the post office and the flat attached, and there's thousands who wouldn't think twice about swapping with us. We're comfortable, yes. Comfortable and very lucky. I miss them so much, you know, me parents. I really do. They had me late. Mum was on the change of life, or so she thought, and the doctor said it was fibroids. Then all of a sudden, there I was, bawling my eyes out in the back bedroom, a bundle of joy, Dad said. But apparently he panicked when her water's broken. Instead of phoning the midwife, he dialed the vet, so he was in a state. Then later, he was ordered to burn the afterbirth in the bin. Whenever he'd had a few drinks, he used that as his party piece. He had quite a sense of humour. Oh, he was lovely. And Mum, well, she never had a nasty bone in her body, that woman. It was really sad because she fell down and she broke her hip. And then she had a stroke, you know, she never really recovered from that. Dad never got over it because they'd been together from school, and, well, I suppose he went into a bit of a decline. As if he was sort of willing himself to be with her. It was all very sad. But I promised him I'd look after the post office and that I've got no intention of letting him down. Everything is in its place, and a place for everything. Stamps over there, postal orders here, motor car stuff and fishing licences over there, and passport applications under the counter. There's not a great demand for those round here, though, I do have to say. And when someone brings one in, I have to check with a fine tooth comb because the slightest tick or cross in the wrong box that it's sent back. It's really the only time the customers get a bit ratty as the queue builds up. The biggest demand is pensions. But the money, that's well under lock and key in the safe drawer. There's over £8,000 in that drawer. And by the end of the day, it'll be all gone. The fact that I handle that amount of money is mainly down to becoming less hands-on cash-wise, and, well, you know, elderly people can't juggle with the internet and fancy computer cards. And while I'm instructed from head office to try and persuade people to take out a banking system to reduce cash held, I just totally ignore it. I mean, that distance from things on computer, especially banking, makes you forget the whole value of money, doesn't it? And my customers, oh, believe you me, knowing the meaning of £1, and so they should. Mind these new £5 and £10 notes, they're like Monopoly money or vouchers. They feel awful. Ooh, I get a terrible tingly feeling, my teeth get all on edge when I touch them. So if I had to say what one of the worst things about this business was, I think it would have to be that. Even worse than robberies, because, well, as you know, Mr. Fowler and I, we can deal with that. Some of my customers have nicknamed me Second Class Joan. I know it's daft, but it's because I always encourage people to send things second class, because at the end of the day, they're all probably going to arrive at the same time, from what I've heard of the post office grapevine. Okay, recorded deliveries, that is a different kettle of fish. But the price of postage these days it's not good, and I like to give my customers a proper service and value because I get a good feeling from it. And I do, of course, have my favourites. Mr. Fowler, obviously, because he always has a twinkle in his eye and a little joke. Some of them are a bit risque, but not out and out. Well, you know, like, what's brown and comes steaming out of cows? The ferry? That's his favourite. Now, he absolutely dotes on his wife Poppy, but I've only ever seen her a couple of times. Once when I attended yoga at the church hall, and the other at the doctor's when I was having my flu jab. She didn't speak, but you know, she waved and she smiled on both occasions. Nice face she has. They both look well matched. Of course, the money I give out, well, that has to stay confidential, and so it should. But you'd be amazed at some of the amounts that people are getting. Oh, it can make you gasp. Some seem to make it their job in life to claim for things, well, I've never even heard of. However, this new universal payment thing is getting rolled out, and I've heard some awful stories, which I'm not going to repeat. But everybody's different, and we shouldn't all be treated the same. Except there is one. No names, of course. But it's a young lady who should know a whole lot better. An ex-policewoman who was assaulted at work and forced to leave. The different pensions that woman gets. And she was only in the force, you know, for 3 years. So, let's just say, I wish I had half of it. It all seems to be classified around disability, and she's fitter than me. Always out jogging, going to the gym, and had the nerve to tell me she was entering a triathlon at the weekend, so make of that what you will. On top of that, the sergeant who took the robber away and often pops in for a cuppa once let it slip, well, accidentally on purpose, that she was on the hunt for a well-heeled superintendent, but is currently seeing a married inspector with 2 children on the sly. And he wasn't overpleased because it was giving the force a bad name. Now, I'm not really one for gossip, but I can't avoid it most times because it seems, a lot of my customers, they just want to unburden themselves. A young woman, right, she came in last Tuesday with 3 children. Oh, they were all crying. One in a papoose on her front, one in a buggy, and the other on reins eating a Greg's pasty. She was frazzled, that lass. And she had a really difficult time getting a family allowance book out of her bags. I wanted to help, but the boy on the reins, well, he kept pulling towards the door, and I can't leave the kiosk because of security. Now, during this kerfuffle, she told me she was a single mother and in arrears with her rent. Her language, I must say, well, it was a bit choice, and from the rings on her fingers and gold chains round her neck, I somehow felt I knew the story, but who am I to judge? Anyway, she left the way she came in. I could hear the noise in the street, and I couldn't help but wonder how that story would end. Oh, it had seeds of tragedy written all over it. But somehow, young girls in that situation, they seem to survive, don't they? But more importantly, it reinforced the responsibility of bringing children into the world, especially as it is now, and how I was pleased I'd decided not to have one long before I was married. Unfortunately, well, that happens to have been a bone of contention with Bob, and the main reason we're the way we are at the moment. We've had rows, and he says I'm selfish, and yes, I do feel some guilt, but after all, it's my body, and quite frankly, to be honest, it scares me. The thought always has. We did consider adopting or fostering, but you hear stories. It's all so difficult and very upsetting because I do care for Bob and I need him. So I try to put all the negative things in a little box out of the way and concentrate on the shop. Oh, that'll be him back. I thought I heard his motorbike before. Probably got forgotten something when he ran off in the huff. He always uses the back stairs, even though there's a connecting door through there. Says it's my fieldom and his persona non grata in here. And that's why I suppose he's installed a kettle and a toaster in the garage, because that's his freedom. So childish, but there you go, that's what we're dealing with. The daft thing is, these moods of his, they change like the weather. Well, it depends on what disease he thinks he has. Shouldn't really laugh at that, He can actually be quite canny. After our last row, he bought me a goldfish and a nice little corner aquarium. So who knows what he might have brought back as a peace offering this time. You see, Bob, he was married before with 2 children, and his former wife, well, she refuses to let him see them because, well, there was a bit of a turmoil over the payments, and that fractured relations, really, as far as his children are concerned. Well, I try to keep out of it, but I somehow always end up to be piggy in the middle. I think he thought marrying me, well, he could start all over again. But because I didn't want children, it's become a major issue, and it's just made things really tense. He's got photos, of the kids on the mantelpiece, and often, when he doesn't realise I can see him, gives him a kiss. Oh, it's sad. I do feel very sorry for him, and I feel even guilty. But at the age I am now, it wouldn't be fair. Because when they're teenagers, I'm going to be an old woman, and then there's all sorts of health problems having one late. I often think that my mum having me when she did was the main cause of her brittle bones. And maybe that's what caused her stroke. The 13-year difference between us didn't matter when we married 8 years ago, but now he's 56, and I think he sees that life's running away from him. He's always on about catching different diseases, constantly checking his blood pressure and forever going to the doctors with the slightest thing. And I wouldn't care. He's as fit as a flea. He's done the Great North Run 5 years in a row, no problem at all. So where he's got this hypochondria from, I really don't know. Ironically, I met a man at the health club. We actually bumped heads in the pool. I was doing backstroke and he was doing a race and crawl, and I split him above the eye. I feel really sorry for him. And from then, well, we literally just sort of bumped into each other more often. I must admit though, I was always hoping I'd see him and we'd have a coffee in the lounge after we'd done our exercise. It was always an evening session because of the post office, and well, one thing sort of led to another, from coffee for going for the odd shandy at the Bluebell. Then we just slowly sort of, drifted together. I'd had 1 or 2 relationships in the past, but somehow the post office always seemed to get in the way. Plus the fact that I was looking after Dad as his carer, well, that must have been a put-off. Bob didn't seem to mind, and he often stayed over doing jigsaws with Dad, which was nice, and he was a massive comfort when Dad passed away, so I'll always be indebted to him for that. His marriage was on the rocks. They were living apart and they were being divorced. Well, I never asked why, because I thought if he wanted me to know, he would say, but I'm sure it wasn't cruelty or badly using her, because he's never given a hint of anything like that to me. But he doesn't talk about it, so there is still an air of mystery about the whole thing. So I never press him, but we all have secrets. And mine is, I've locked it well away in a little box, never to be opened. And it'll go to the grave. It's strange, isn't it? Looking back at things, it's as if I've been several different persons. And as I get older, I know I'm turning into someone else. Sometimes when I'm doing my hair, I get a flavour of my mum, just around the eyes. And sad though it is, I'm quite comforted by that. When I say different, I mean more recognising that what you thought was important before, like money, material things, nothing really, because they're nothing, because we're only looking after them for a little while. Here's me now in the small post office, in a place hardly anybody's heard of, and it's been my life, and Mum and Dad's before me. But when I think of all the people that we've helped to post their parcels and letters to family and friends all over the world, giving Charlie Thompson his fishing licence and him coming in with 2 river trout as a thank you, well, it's just by being here with people and memories, isn't it? Now surely that's got to mean something. That's him off to some emergency. Well, I hope he's heated up his porridge. I hate him going to work on an empty stomach. In fact, I think I'll get him a Tesco's finest for 2 with a bottle of wine to cheer him up later. Anyway, time to face the public. I always knew I was never going to be a raving beauty, but I do have qualities. Apart from my ears, but my hair covers them up. I do Zumba twice a week and I swim whenever I can, so my figure's not bad for my age. No spare tyre or treble chins. But to be fair, I suppose people see me as ordinary. I've never had any illusions, but it seems I've been kidding myself. 3 days ago I was on top of the world, right up there as they say, buzzing. But what goes up must come down. And just as God made little apples, it has, with an almighty crash. Bob came back all right, but the Norton's gone, along with the photographs, and he left me a little present, a ham and peas pudding sandwich with 2 cherry tomatoes on the side of a plate, a bag of crinkle cut crisps, and a tea bag in a cup, and a letter. All it says is, romance has entered my life. Second class Joan. And here's me thinking it was all about stamps. Thank you. Well done. Thank you.
Alison Stanley, she's just announced that she's opened a new film company, Broken Knacker. She's a great playwright. She's got some great plays. Tits Up is tour. Do you want to just do a quick promo?
Well,
well, you do it because you've got no
I've just come to get me drink, actually. I wasn't coming back.
Tits Up is coming out, so it's coming out as a film as well, but
so,
you're doing a play.
Yeah, so the play Tits Up, that I wrote along with Leah Bell, that's got a UK tour in October. Shameless plug. We are stopping off at Customs House and Live Theatre as part of the North East, so do come and see it. And we just announced on Monday that we are in pre-production. It is going to be a feature film starring Chrissy Rock, Cheryl Ferguson, oh God, there's like loads. Chrissy Rock, Cheryl, Tommy Cannon, Fraser Hines now is joining the Merry Band, and of course me. So the cameras start rolling in August, so it's very exciting, so you'll have to watch out for that. Thank you. Thank you.
They don't do tales like this anymore. Adam said they were kiln dried, whatever that means, but I use warm water and a dash of vinegar to make them smile. I've already sluiced the cubicles, because there was a right dirty animal in there last night. Oh, it was everywhere. Had to be a man. No woman could ever reach that high. I had to use all of my specialist equipment and emergency disinfectant to get rid of it. Oh, a pig's cleaner. People, they always seem to disappoint you. Me last day, eh? And they couldn't wait to board Adam's side up. Broke his heart. What a lovely man. The letter did it for him. Very sad, because him and I have been here for over 15 years. Such a precise person, everything in its place, a confirmed bachelor, always quoting long-sounding names that often I didn't know what he was on about, but his Cornish lilt, I could listen to it all day. But the letter, this bloody thing, and that swearing to it, it was a dagger that broke an elephant's back. Dear Sir, or Madam, not even a name. It's Gokaitcha, Evelyn Gokaitcha, Mr. Executive of Sanitation. And like it or not, I'm from Spanish extraction. Not only is it upsetting, but a bloody insult. I wouldn't care. He wears a ginger wig, which says everything about him. The horrible snake. What me mum would call a big knout. This is to inform you that from the 5th of October, and they're that clever, they didn't even say which year, that the position that you hold will be downsized. Policy dictates that the property listed below, my urinal, is surplus to requirements. Oh, we thank you for your loyalty and wish you all the best for the future. The bloody future. I'm being sacked. But Adam, who hasn't a bad bone in his body, he was convinced we were being relocated to one of the top jobs at the Civic Centre. All shiny and non-steam mirrors, stainless steel and fancy hand dryers. Oh, he had it all worked out in his imagination. Kept telling us, embrace the seat of commercial power, Revelin. It's the future. That word again. The future. Poor man. Poor man. They found him hanging from the banister. His dad's First World War medals pinned to his jumper. He's kicked a chair away and his pocket watch was on the floor, broken at the time it happened, along with his P45. Bastards. And that's too good for them. It's a sin before God to pull down this beautiful place, which has been my life. Adam reckoned the Victorians put goldfish in glass cisterns. Now, whether that's true or not, it's still a lovely thought and tells you all about real style. I've got the brass and copper pipes polished within an inch of their lives. And for what? To be waiting for scrap. Adam used to say, "Urinal, Evelyn." The word drips off the tongue like honey. These are the finest water closets in Christendom. He didn't even leave a note. Oh, Adam, pet. If only you'd said something. Anything. I would have given you a great big cuddle to forget all of those horrible, horrible thoughts. The bastards. I mean, I never used to swear, but life gets you like that. Dad would turn in his grave to hear me and bang the top of my head with his rolled up chronicle. Well, they'd call it abuse now, but I always saw those taps as discipline and it never ever hurt. But I knew social services knew, like they know now, I'd have been taken and put into care. But despite what Adam thought, I knew they were going to pull this block down as sure as the cat's a hairy beast. I went into the Civic Centre and looked at the future development maps. They planned to make a nice green space. A couple of trees, some seats, which is nice. But this is going to be a store selling electric cigarettes. So people are going to be walking around looking like the Flying Scotsman. I mean, you look back and wonder about life and progress and wonder if it's made us any happier or any better off. I mean, as a family, we had nothing. Me mum was a housewife, and you could tell what time of day it was by which bit of the house she was dusting. Well, I suppose I get that from her. And what we never realised was that in later life, she actually never went out of the house. She had all of her vegetables and that delivered, and Dad would bring the bread and the other shopping back. Agoraphobia. It had to be. And we never realised it, because like Alzheimer's, it wasn't invented then. I mean, my dad worked in a fish and chip shop, so there was always food on the table. The trouble was, no matter how hard he tried, he could never get the smell out of his skin, and I couldn't face another battered cod to save me life. My sister Joyce, she got into trouble. She had to marry at 18. Oh, big family disgrace. They never forgave her. It made life difficult. And because of that, well, I never married. Oh, I mean, I went out with the odd bloke and I always felt guilty about leaving Mum and Dad. And I ended up looking after both of them till they passed on. It wasn't easy, but I felt it was my duty. And I grew very, very close to them, and I'm glad that I did, as it also settled me into my own skin. I learned how to defend my space and didn't want to share it. Except for when I was here with Adam. I mean, there was nothing but pure friendship between us. And I don't think, in all of that time, we ever even touched each other. But it was special. You know, a special sort of love. And now he, and all I've ever really wanted, is being taken away from me. I'm expecting Joyce for our weekly bath. Arthritis creeping into her joints. Well, I mean, my fingers are going the same way. Oh, family lumps. My mum was the same. Rubbed her hands with aloe vera every night. Joyce comes with her bus pass. Oh, it's been a boon. I get mine in 2 years' time. I can't wait. You've got no idea what it costs me to come here on the 33A every day. It'll be our last bath. So as a special treat, I've got some Epsom salts for the water. It helps to bring the acid in the joints come out through the feet. I mean, our Joyce hasn't had it easy, what with all the family stuff. She and Bob emigrated to Australia on assisted passage to make a fresh start, as she put it. It never really worked out. He drove big wagons and she was tied with a bairn. And it's as if God didn't want her to be happy, because he was drowned in a pond near the house when he was 5. I mean, it was just a shallow pond. But he'd run in after a ball and tripped and banged his head. She found him face down in the water, and it devastated her. Put a huge strain on the marriage. And of course, Bob blamed her for it. So they spent most of their lives marooned there. And then Bob tragically died in a car accident, leaving her on her own. I mean, coming back, she did pick up some of the pieces and was fortunate in living in Bob's mother's house, in our council house, and like me, cared for her until she was gone. So not a lot of good times. We'll go to bingo twice a week, support each other as best we can, and giving her a bath on the council seems only right and proper. I mean, there's more than 2 sides to our Joyce, and as far as Adam was concerned, she said that I'm attracted to strange people. She accused him of mincing when he walked. Even though I told her this was probably due to his show business background, but, well, she wasn't having any of it. She said he was a Nancy boy who plucked his eyebrows and more than likely had excesses. That side of her unfortunate choice of words upset me, and I defended him to the hilt. But the harder I tried, the less she was convinced. And then, as if by magic, the other side would come out when she spoke to him. In fact, it was quite embarrassing, because she used to batter her eyelashes and show all her new teeth and a smile right up to her pink palate. If I didn't know her better, I'd have sworn she was flirting with him. Adam thought she was a lovely woman, and here's me in the middle. And to be fair though, Joyce was very upset about Adam, and we both did shed a tear at his funeral, which was a very quiet affair. No relatives that we could see, just a smattering of friends and neighbours. But the worst bit was, there was not one representative from the council. What a shower of bastards. I mean, working here gives you a different slant. You meet all sorts. Well, for a few weeks, a young homeless girl used to sleep in here at night. Now, I don't know if she was a drug addict or not, but she always kept herself clean and never left any mess. And I didn't have the heart to stop her. And then that ginger-wigged snake of a supervisor got wind, and I was told I had to tell her to stop or otherwise. Well, otherwise what? I asked. Just otherwise, I was told. He had a very nasty way with him. I mean, I felt awful telling her. But, she just hugged us and said not to worry. And the last I saw of her was walking out of here with her life in 2 carrier bags, a big smile, and she was off. And you just wonder, why? And what happened to her? I mean, I'm not exaggerating about the snake. He's all touchy-feely and sweats a lot. And his wig looks like it's been down a rat hole. Holier than now on regulations. But I know all about the jiggery and pokery that he got up to with Elsie, the tea lady. And how he got flattened by her husband. The man who took the mickey out of Adam and the way he walked, calling him a puff. Ha! Power. Well, I hope he has nightmares about him hanging there. Toilet rolls. You'd be surprised at the number of these we'll go through. Hey, I once caught a woman in an expensive fur coat with 4 in her bag. Removed them from every cubicle. Isha screamed and threatened to bite us when I attempted to take them off her. But fortunately, Adam heard the kerfuffle and saved the situation with his walking stick. He tapped her hard on the ankles and then she gave them back. It was funny watching her limping out being chased by Adam, who, despite his very slight appearance, had some gumption in his back. He reckoned it all stemmed from the time on the gang show. Apparently, as a young man, he'd been on the variety stage, and the way he walked, I could see he was very light on his feet, like a dancer. We used to have a laugh, and a cuppa in his office, when times were slack, because the new ring road had taken a lot of the trade away, so there was nothing untoward me going in there. He'd pull the blind down if a customer came in. It was all done very discreetly. And as you can see, my small office is a cosy chair, a small table, a set of drawers to keep spare soap and sanitary stuff and that. But Adam's, it was like stepping back in time. Posters, music hall posters, plants, 2 easy chairs and a windy up gramophone and a tea's made. Home from home, he would say. You could eat your dinner off the floor. We had many adventures together. But the worst experience was the police swoop when I found a miscarriage. A perfectly formed little mite in cubicle 2. Well, at first I thought someone had left a chicken in a carrier bag. But when I looked proper, I nearly fainted when I saw the little hands clenched like fists. It was beyond sad. But the way I was treated by the police, you'd think I was the guilty party. Now, I've always had the utmost respect for them police, but being interrogated, that wasn't nice. There was 2. The older one sort of spoke from the corner of his mouth and kept calling us honey, which, to be honest, it made us feel a bit uncomfortable. But the younger one whispered quietly that he was okay, really. And I suppose me being uptight about the situation created the atmosphere. But the real reason was that in the back of my mind, I was worried in case the homeless girl was somehow involved, but I never mentioned her. The situation certainly knocked Adam and me off kilter, just to think what torment that woman must have gone through. And it took me back to our Joyce's situation and whether she'd had similar thoughts, running through her mind. And then, having gone through all of that and having to suffer the tragedy of what had happened. I mean, you really just can't go there, can you? I never had any real illusions about life. I didn't. And looking back, well, I've been lucky. My health has been pretty good. Except for the normal aches and pains, chicken pox and a short bout of pleurisy when I was young, and the family lumps. Getting me tonsils out, that wasn't very nice. And a couple of years ago, I had a bunion taken off. But boiling everything down to brass tacks compared to a lot of others in my life, my life has been very small. Getting married never seemed to be on the cards after Joyce's experience. And I never yearned for children, so maybe that vibe put men off. And in many ways, Adam's situation and mine were very similar. A natural happenstance that we were thrown together because we were a good team. If he ran out of paper or disinfectant, I saw him all right, and vice versa. back scratching, I suppose. You know, I mentioned those 2 policemen before. Well, they did come back to tell us that the baby hadn't been murdered, which was a sort of blessing. So the poor little mite mustn't have suffered. But that day was certainly an eye-opener. Oh, hey. I mean, one I will never forget. Adam invited them into his office for a cup of tea, and I was dispatched to get some Savoys. It was all very surreal, but sort of nice, and, you know, I was getting used to the older one who had a naughty glint in his eye, and the younger one had a permanent smile on his rosy face, and I could see they got on well together, and obviously enjoyed the job. And Adam was in full flow about his days on the stage and about the famous people that he'd met, like Lita Rosa. The older one winked at me, then mischievously suggested, out the corner of his mouth, that perhaps Adam would like to give us a song. Well, at first Adam was a little bit coy, but I could see he wanted to perform and was impressed by the policeman using the word rendition. So after very little persuasion, he agreed. Now, the young policeman was dispatched to the door to prevent anybody coming in, and Adam put some black boot polish on his face. The older policeman gave him some white gloves, and Adam transformed into something else as he began to sing "Mammy" like Al Johnson. I'd never seen that side of him before. It was as if he was filled with electricity, and he had a beautiful singing voice. Yeah, a special moment. He was fantastic. The older one smiled at me as if to say, "Oh, I told you." But, unfortunately, he forgot he was holding his Savoy as he clapped, and it squashed right down the front of his uniform. I smiled back and thought, it serves you right. The younger policeman just ruptured himself laughing, and Adam, being the person he was, rushed to assist with a damp cloth. You know, looking back on that day, it was a precious moment for all of us. And, you know, I'll always remember it with great fondness. And that's the thing about life. It always hits you when you least expect it. You know, for good and for bad. It's just as well we don't know what lies round the corner. And, in a strange way, it was nice to be called honey by that older policeman. And, you know, Adam and I only ever had crosswords on a couple of occasions. The first was when he put up with a tramp called Arthur. Arthur what? I don't know. But what a dirty, obnoxious person. And Adam just seemed to ignore it. Unlike the homeless girl, he never kept himself clean. And his language was disgraceful. Every other sentence littered with profanity. And the thing that rankled even more was his blasphemy before God. If I had to describe him, he looked just like that American murderer Manson, who died recently. Yeah, that would be a good description. He'd appear for a couple of days with all sorts of rubbish in bags, a large rucksack on his back, and goodness knows of how many layers of rancid clothing. You could see cardboard sticking out of his Nike trainers. Then he'd be gone for a couple of weeks to return with even more rubbish, once with a bowler hat on. Oh, and the smell, oh, it's impossible to describe. Ma'am, working in the fish house, had a saying for everything, and not all of them repeatable. She would have called it the smell of knickers on an oven door. So I always kept well out of the way when he appeared, but he always stuck his head round the door to give me a mouthful of filth. Even so, I just couldn't understand why Adam put up with him. I mean, he used to say he was just unfortunate, who'd apparently had been a very fine surgeon in his day, the victim of cruel circumstances. Surgeon? God help anybody he laid his hands on, that's all I can say. And while I'm not making anything of it, I could swear he had some sort of powder on his face and what looked like lipstick. But the biggest injustice of all was, for some reason, the snake never ever found out, and there was my poor homeless girl hounded to bits. But I suppose that's life. There's no such fairness. Oh, we did have a ding-dong about religion. He was convinced that as the Far Eastern hot weather mentality was the reason behind the worshipping of graven images. I mean, I couldn't have that, because I always believed there is something beyond this life, and everyone has the right to believe in their own God and to give them hope. So what was terribly wrong in that? Adam wasn't convinced. Everyone, Evelyn, are you saying that everyone has some good in them? Well, there was a tone in his voice, and I'd never heard this before. You know, as if something had happened to him that he couldn't forgive. I said, I hope they did. Don't be so sure, Evelyn. But the way he said it certainly made me wonder. I suppose the only way we'll ever know is when we cross over. And my dear friend, you'll know all the answers now. I better start drawing our Joyce's bath soon, because she'll be setting off. Now, she can't use her pass until after 9:30. And then there's at least a 10-minute walk to get here, and she'll be sweating a bit. Like I say, I feel sorry for her situation. But sometimes because of her past, she has an unfortunate manner and doesn't care what she says to anybody, least of all me. But I'm used to it. But sometimes it can be hurtful. Like when I've just had my hair done and she'll say, oh, it shows up your fat neck. Well, I mean, all right. I've got a bit extra around here, but you know, a nice scarf, and who's to know? She keeps going on that she's convinced she had rickets during the war, which made her bandy. I mean, I wouldn't say they were that bandy, but it's just her age with those, and those high heels don't help. And she's not happy with her pills. They puff her eyes up and they make her breath smell, and on and on. Oh, I've told her to throw the doctor's book away, but once she gets a bath, she changes into a completely different person. Her toenails cut easily because they're soft, making her all relaxed, smiling and at peace with the world. Oh, she always brings a nice cream home or apple slice to have with our tea. And in the state of things in the world, things don't really get much better than that. She's my sister, and I love her to bits. And this watch, it was me mum's. She called it a cocktail watch. Always wore it for weddings and funerals. And although it's a little bit tight on my wrist, I never take it off, because she's always with us. She didn't have an easy life before she was married, working in the fish houses, gutting herring all day in the freezing cold, and up to our Wellingtons and icy water. A dog's life. Slave labour. We used to ask her to bring some kippers home, but she would never have them in the house. And it was through following the fishing from Scotland down the coast with the other lasses that she met me dad, who was working at the CN Netters. But you know, that's all I ever really knew, because they never spoke about their families or background. They mentioned grandparents and that, but I never met any of them. Never met any of that side of the family. It's all a big mystery. Yeah. My mum took a lot of secrets to the grave. Well, I better get this lot sorted. So, what have we got? Hammer and screwdriver, just in case somebody gets locked in. Adam's emergency kit. Tin of WD-40, whatever that is. And there's my brasso and wire wool, washing up bottle with vinegar. And these, an old bed sheet torn into strips. And toilet rolls. Probably the most important item here. Now this. I've had it since I was a girl. British birds and their habitat. It was my main present one Christmas, and even though it's a bit dog-eared, even though it's been a bit dog-eared, it takes me back to then, that Christmas. I've always loved watching the birds, and even though we only had a backyard, I used to put out fat and bread on a makeshift bird table my dad knocked together and hung a bit of coconut for the blue tits. Normally it would be the house sparrows, spuggies as we used to call them, and starlings, who made a dreadful noise and stole most of the food. Funnily enough, you don't see many starlings these days, but the colours of the different birds in here are fantastic. You know, greenfinch, bullfinch, kingfishers, woodpeckers, collared doves. There's magic about those little balls of fluff and bone. I was knitting this for him. A sort of thank you and going away present. Cable stitch, nice and warm for the winter, and his favourite colour, pale green. All I had to do was pick up the neck. 10 days, that's all it took. 8 balls of wool, big needles, and a dead simple pattern. Adam. He had such hopes and dreams. He had hopes and dreams that would be getting interviewed for a top job. And then he goes and does that. I thought I knew him. I still can't believe it. Well, I better start running that bath. It takes ages because the pipes are all furred up. But our Joyce will be full of hell if it's 6 inches from the top. She'll just be heading up the street right now, ready to take on the world with her Greg's green horns.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sharon Percy.
I suppose it's the smell that hits you as you open the door. A mixture of poverty, old people, scented candles and body odour as people are scrapping through bargains. But no Ming vases have been found yet. I only work here 3 days a week to get out of the house so I can actually speak to human beings. Doing good has now to do with it. Listen, it's 68. I say what I like, so sod it if I upset people. If they don't like the truth, tough. Of course, that's always my truth, and not always theirs. You see, after 28 years as a policewoman and dealing with all it threw at me, it's nice to be able to throw a little bit back without being danced before the chief on a discipline charge. Yes, those 20 years set me up to recognise there are a lot of bastards in this world, but it also gave me a successful career in pipe tobacco. Sorting dead people's clothes and turning them into live persons' pride and joy, and hopefully saving sunburn covered in flies with a distended belly in Africa. Look, I know I'm on the last lap, out of breath, taking pills for goodness knows what, but I'm still in the race, and that's the main thing. And you never know what you're going to find. Definitely a pipe. No, it can't be. It's a Napo pass. This, oh my God, it's ridiculous. George Embley Watson. Christ, National Association of Retired Police Officers. The dirty old sod's dead. Whoa. Pimper Watson. Him of the dark eyes and even darker thoughts. Either reckon he could spot a crack in a bathroom curtain half a mile on a foggy night and had a ladder stashed on 3 beat to take full advantage of the nurse's home. If everything that's said about old Pimper was true, he turned Peepin' Tommen into an art form. I'm told he refereed couples in the park on his hands and knees on the way into work, with builder's pads on the damp grass. Probably the same park he went fishing with his grandson. The 2 of them, nets and a jam jar full of sticklebacks. Oh, look at it, what a lovely photo. Lovely Ben. But hey, I'm not saying he was a bad person. You can see the way he's got his arms round him and the look in his eyes that the sun shone out of his backside. Peter fishing. That's all it says. But the photo says so much more. But isn't that what death's all about, eh? Keeping secrets. What's young Peter doing now, eh? And no matter what I say, you just keep on loving him, son. Because whatever secrets I know, he obviously worshipped you. And let's just hope you didn't inherit his nocturnal habits and his second name, Embley. What's the story behind that, eh? Probably after his granddad, who probably had a photo of him in his wallet. There's something about photos, isn't there? The features change, but the eyes always stay the same. They trap a moment of life until it's thrown in the bin. Oh, George Embley Watson of Napo and his cycloptical pursuits was a beat sergeant when I joined in the city in 1962 as a fresh innocent in the policewoman's department. He rarely spoke to me except when he was signing my pocketbook, but he had a nice smile. I felt he was awkward around women, so maybe that's what it was. Strange, the essence of a man I hardly knew was triggering off a bin bag full of memories after sucking a pipe and chewing strong mints. It's strange when you set out on this journey and you think that you know you're heading that you know where you're heading, and nearly always wrong. At school, I won the English prize and the teacher wanted me to go to university, but I had to look after my mum. My first job was in the local library and I liked it, but the money was dreadful, so I applied for a post at the Ministry of Pensions. Money was better, but boring. Sitting like battery hens writing in ledgers all day, and you could tell everything about people from the entries. I mean, for instance, I got a very famous film star's card, and I knew that she was married to an even bigger star. She was already 3 months pregnant. So long before computers, Big Brother was alive and well in Long Benton. What an awful place. Blokes in D-mob suits and women in cardigans sitting in their corners hatching up how they could get promoted or move to the posher Leeds office. All prim and proper on the outside, but the affairs going on were nobody's business. And I couldn't help thinking about them going home to their families, living out their lives through lies. This was the beginning of the 60s, and the Ministry of Pensions was so drab and dated. I mean, first day back, I told me mum I'd made a huge mistake, but I was trapped. You see, she wasn't in the best of health, and I wouldn't leave the house. It's called agoraphobia now, but then it didn't have a name, because nobody understood what it was. Dad died 3 years earlier of galloping consumption. So I was the breadwinner, and we were effectively both trapped by her condition. One September evening I came home, and normally she'd be waiting with my tea ready. I could smell a casserole slowly cooking in the oven. So I shouted, and I looked in like all the rooms and started panicking. The sun was shining through the kitchen window, and the bentwood chair, which usually stood by the fire, it wasn't there. So I went in the backyard, and there it was, in a block of bright autumn sunshine. A dread that hit the pit of my stomach as I opened the outside lavatory door. Still don't know why she did it. No note, nothing. 1 minute sitting soaking the sun and the next. I can still smell the casserole when I think about it. And I often wonder if she did it to release me. For years, I expected her to call from one of the rooms or see her sitting in that Brentwood chair in front of the fire doing a crossword. Every bag I open, I get the feeling that the person is there talking to us. And she did set us free. I left the ministry sharpish. I'd met Brian, who just completed his probation as a copper in Newcastle. We met at the Oxford Galleries. He was on special duty, and I'd had my handbag stolen. I saw this lad do it and I chased for him from the dance. Then Brian, who was on the door, chased him. It was packed outside at closing time, and the thief snatched a bottle of tomato sauce from the hot dog seller's barrow and threw it at Brian. It bounced off a taxi, splattered him, but Brian grabbed the mustard bottle, rugby tackled him and squirted the mustard straight into the thief's mouth. Oh, it was funny. The crowd cheered. As he was taking my statement, he asked if I fancied seeing From Russia with Love at the Asoldo. And when we went, there was a queue right round the cinema. But Brian flashed his warrant card and we got straight in. Oh, Brian was dead easy to talk to and tall. I like tall men. His eyes were like David Bowie, one hazel and the other green, which made him look like as if he had a little squint sometimes. But he was dead nice and old-fashioned in his ways. Always walked on the outside and opened the door for us. And I knew after we'd seen Bullet with Steve McQueen that, oh, he was the one for me. 1 year later, we got married, very quietly, at the registry office. We'd been living in Mum's council house, which wasn't really convenient, so Brian found us a basement flat in Jesmond, next to the cemetery. Oh, I stayed on at the ministry for a few weeks, but I realised I hated it even more with Brian's shifts, because we just didn't see each other. He came up with the idea, why didn't I join the force? Well, it seemed daft. But when I looked at it and I realised it could solve a lot of problems, there were very few women in the police then. But Brian worked out how I could get in. You see, he was a cornet player in the police band, which did functions all over the country. And the singer had retired. And as I was still a member of the church choir, he suggested I try out for them. Well, I did. They liked us, and I started travelling with the band. So, well, I had to wear a police uniform, and after a few months, the band leader, Chief Inspector Crow, suggested that I apply for the job proper, and he would back me. So, I got through the back door. The first day I walked through the revolving doors at Pilgrim Street, I was already comfortable in them surroundings. The policewoman's department was small, only about 8 in the force, and I was the youngest by far. As I worked basically day shift and the odd late turn, it brought Brian and I together. But my first encounter was with a colleague called Anne. And I heard her on the phone in the office, and her voice, oh, was beautiful. So, correct, yes. Yes, I'll certainly look at it, sir. No, don't you hesitate to call me if you have any more trouble with your daughter walking in the office. I walked in that office, I got a shock as I was faced with an extremely portly woman of about 50 with short, butch, greasy hair, red bleary eyes, sucking on a cigarette through a clenched fist. She had a nervous tic, which was captivating, and she continually scratched her nether regions, obviously to what she was doing. The smell of cheap powder, body odour and cigarette smoke was overpowering. The voice and the image, well, it just did not compute. And looking me up and down in a rasping voice, oh, so it's Glamour the one now, is it? My face welled up burning red. But before I could respond, the phone rang again. She picked it up and that sexy voice seductively came out, at the same time grinding a cigarette butt and half-eaten plate of scrambled egg flapping me away dismissively. As if to rescue me, Olive entered with a lovely smile. Now, Olive was the inspector and indicated I follow her. Olive was the complete opposite to Anne, a really nice lady who used her sexuality to the full. Walking, she thought she was Marilyn Monroe. And as soon as any man appeared, she really turned it on. I followed her wiggle along the passage and she waved to Big Sam. The superintendent, you know, through the door and in his office. Big Sam viewed the world through that crack and nothing ever escaped him. Olive was very nice about everything. Setting out the standards required in dress and attitude. She said she supported my band commitments, but that it might get up the noses of some of the other girls, so I had to ensure to help out as much as I could. My role wasn't ever really cleanly defined, but the first job as I left Olive's office was to be barked at by Big Sam as I tried to sneak past the crack in the door. He dispatched me to Stan Seymour's shop on the corner of Market Street for a tin of 50 senior service and a cup of tea from the canteen with 4 sugars. Now, Big Sam appeared to do very little, but sit in his 23 stone behind a desk, smoking continually and drinking tea. A perpetual motion that reminded me of one of them storks that dip the beaks into a glass of water. You can't be too careful opening these. I've had rubbish that should have gone into that bin, dirty nappies and magazines filled with tikka masala cartons. I've had to have anti-tetanus injections twice through sharp edges, and another lady here had a huge scare when she pricked her finger on a blood-filled syringe and had to wait weeks to be cleared in case she caught HIV. Never mind. But, hey, you get to know your regulars. Folk looking for a bit of company and a chat, and the experts looking for hidden antiques with bloody magnifying glasses looking for magic marks. What they don't realise is that whenever we get anything that looks a little bit special, we call in our own experts. But there's always the one that gets through the net. So, if you let it, a bit like the police force, you could get a bit cynical working here. And then along comes a young mother last week to return a £20 note that she found folded up in the corner of her pocket, which reinforces that there are a lot of nice, honest people, mind, in the world. And yes, we've had our shoplifters. We more or less just let them get away with it because what they're stealing isn't worth anything anyway. And if they're that desperate, why, come on, they can have it. I draw the line at the charity box, so if anybody ever tried to get away with that, they'd certainly have me to deal with. Bad bunions and all, because I've got a nice lumpy shillelagh behind that desk. Now this one is a pleasure. Kiddies' clothing, look at them, all neatly folded and washed. There must be a huge turnover of early children's clothes because they grow out of them that quick, don't they? But if I had my time over again, I'd definitely go into that business of making cones. Of course, as a new girl, I was immediately blooded on my first Sunday duty. I was teamed up with PC Harry the horse because of his propensity to be able to drink pint after pint without swallowing. We were having a cup on one of the stores on the quayside when a young lad said there was a body under the high-level bridge. My instinct was to rush there, but Harry grabbed me arm and he said, "Never rush to anything, pet, or the public will start to panic." Well, by the time we got there, a large crowd had gathered, and the CID and others arriving, and there was the body, lying under the rocks, about 20 yards away on his back. Tide was out, and it being a hot sunny day, even from that distance it was obvious he'd been in that river a long time. The senior officers were huddled, and then one of them ordered me and Harry to go to the rocks and pull the body onto the bank. Absolutely terrible. Body was bloated. The rats and crabs had been at him. But the one thing that really stuck with us was he had long flowing red hair. Even though it was matted, I couldn't help but wonder what a waste of life. Harry was good. He was good support. And later, we had to attend the post-mortem. Again, Harry, sensitive to the situation, gave me mints to suck on, so the stench, it was absolutely dreadful. But I seemed able to step outside of myself, and I got through it. Then we had the task of informing his mother and telling her, oh my God, that was hard enough. But taking her to the chapel of rest was awful. I mean, the only real way of identifying him was a tattoo on his arm. She went berserk, screaming and crying, grabbing his body, and then they both fell on the floor. Separating them was a bloody nightmare. And as we left the RVI, Harry looked at me and his eyes told me I just knew it had affected him. There wasn't really a proper answer. Then he said, right, now for the supreme test, and took us to the cafe in the Haymarket and ordered up 2 mixed grills, liver bacon, the lot. Eat that, pet, and you'll never have to worry again about a post-mortem. I passed the test. Just. And when I got home, I offloaded it all, and then I welled up outside, and Brian gave us a big hug and a cuddle, took us to see 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, and life was good again. At work I was getting on well with the other girls. I mean, even Anne wasn't such a bad old stick after all. Her home life hadn't been so good, like. She lived on her own with 6 cats, and apart from the body odour and the smells, she actually taught me the ropes quite well. There was never any nonsense with her. Never take any money from a prostitute, Marie. Why? Because they rub themselves with it and then they stare at you as you count it. She taught me everything about searching prisoners, including the intimate kind. And was at pains to say that I should never take away anyone's dignity. Oh, she was wonderful with lost children and always went out of her way to buy them sweets and a little present. Oh, but you could also be as tough as old boots. I'd had to go down to the photographic department to pick up some photos at an incident, and I hadn't been warned about the detective sergeant in charge. Oh, nice looking bloke. But very easily cornered me beside the hype machine, and I had a job to wriggle away. Anne saw us coming out. She recognised something was wrong, and when I told her, she took me and stormed into the department. Want a woman, do you, Sergeant? He smiled, and there was terror in his eyes. Well, why don't you grope me? Wrapped her arms around him and kneed him right in the groin. As he sank to the floor groaning, she smiled, ruffled his hair. Sorry, Sergeant. We'll call it a draw, eh? Hey, the band was doing well. And we had some prestigious venues. I mean, including the celebrations of the grand opening of the new Civic Centre. We'd bought a 2-bedroomed house as well, on an estate on the Coast Road. Wolseley, 1,500. And I fell pregnant with Linda. Wasn't planned, but God was good, and she was delivered at home by my own doctor. A lovely little girl. She was always smiling. I took a year off and was told I could reapply if I wanted to. But once I had her, I really didn't fancy it at all. I mean, she was definitely Daddy's little girl and could twist him around a little finger. But while I say God is good and I do have faith, despite being a policewoman, I have to wonder. When Linda was 3, Brian came home one day feeling sick, like flu symptoms and a dreadful cough that came from his boots. Brian never had a day off sick. Never. And he felt guilty about it. We put it down to him getting soaked at St. James's Park when he was on special duty. But after 3 days, the doctor came and he gave him some pills. By the end of the week, he was no better. So he was sent to the hospital for a chest x-ray. He seemed to improve. Then the letter arrived. Couched in careful words, it stated that An irregularity may have occurred in the procedure, and he needed to have another one taken. It was at pains to explain that this often happened, and nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. Something told us there was everything to worry about. The consultant was very nice and professional about it, but there was no other way of telling us what we didn't want to hear. And it was devastating. In his lungs, apparently, brought on by the forced way that he played the cornet. After treatments began, we were told he had 6 months. 6 bloody months! At 26! Did I say God was good? He actually lived 6 months and 4 days. And you know what? That man never complained once. People blithely talk about quality time, and really, they don't know what that means. 6 months and 4 days. But we did make the most of it. I know it's daft, but it was the happiest time that we spent together as a family. The job allowed us, like back on the odd days, to do the office work and keep in touch with his colleagues. But they did him proud. Full police funeral, smart uniforms, and the band played his favourite hymn, Bread of Heaven. Oh. It was his best mate, Alan, who pulled me out of the depression. But it took over 12 months, mind. I tried to concentrate on Linda, who was obviously missing her daddy, but she seemed to cope better than me. Alan was also having a rough time as well. His wife had done off with a traffic warden, and we were thrown in together. He persuaded us to go back to the force now that Linda was settled at school, and his mum kindly offered to act as a childminder, picking her up and giving her tea, and if I couldn't get away from work. There was nothing like sexual going on between us. But he'd been a fantastic mate to Brian, and he gave me terrific support. But I kept me distance. Went out for the odd meal, nothing more, and more important of all, he taught us to drive so I could use the Wolseley. And every time I looked at the Christmas tree air freshener on the mirror, Brian was with us. I was still occasionally singing in the band, but I wanted more. I'd passed the sergeant's exam and I was transferred to CID, but Alan seemed to look at us with a different set of eyes. And it had been about 4 years since Brian had died. I'd retained my loyalty to his memory, and while several men had asked us out, the only person I ever wanted to go out with was Alan. I loved him, but like a brother or a close friend. And he never made a move on us. His mother had been wonderful with Linda, mind, and almost looked up on like a blood relative, but our relationship began to take its toll, and Linda was coming to an age where education was vital. So I was volunteering all hours to bulk up my overtime payments because I was determined she would have a good private education, and decided to send her to boarding school. So when I passed my promotion board to sergeant, I knew that I could make it to the rank because I was the only qualified policewoman in the division. Anne had retired to the Lake District with her cats, and Olive, despite her Marilyn wiggle, suddenly turned out to be a lesbian and transferred to another force on promotion. But she actually sent me a little note on my success, which I thought was a nice touch. How she knew, I don't know. But there is a strong, indestructible grapevine on the force, you know. So somebody at the end was marking her card. I got on well with most of the lads in CID. And I took on some difficult cases, mind. Initially there was a tendency for them to pass on simple gyro frauds and domestic assaults. But I got involved in several nasty stabbings, and one of them, which I detected on my own. And I was then called to assist on interviews involving murder witnesses. And I didn't keep my hand out of my purse when we went for a few drinks after duty, because there were 1 or 2 show jumpers in the office, those who always had a clear round in the pub. Well, perhaps I was becoming too complacent and comfortable with my life, because the home front came to a big bust-up. I collected Linda one tea time, and I noticed that Alan and his mum were poor-faced and offhand. I said, why, has Linda been naughty? Long silence. And there's Alan's mum. I understand you're sending Linda to boarding school. Well, yes, I said. What's the problem with that? Well, Linda doesn't want to go. And then Linda chimed up supporting Alan and his mum. I couldn't believe it. It was as if I was the enemy. Their socialist views on comprehensive schooling were spat at me as if I was from another planet. Well, it became very heated and everything tumbled out. How I'd been selfish, taken them for granted. Then Alan blurted out what he was really thinking when he said that I thought more of my career than Linda and that his friendship had taken a back seat. His mum said I hadn't treated him right and that I realised that the two of them had thought out I'd realised that they thought our relationship was going to develop into something further. The way she said it and the look on his face stung me. More hateful. Loads of things were said and it fractured our relationship and trust. I lost my temper. I dragged Linda away screaming. It was awful. And I'm sorry to say, but Linda was turning into a brat. Somebody's treasured CD collection. All in alphabetical order, you know. And obviously well cared for from their condition. Hours of pleasure and dreams. Something about music that carries you into other places away from real life, isn't it? Take me home, country roads, to the place I belong, West Virginia, Mountain Mama, John Denver. Wonderful voice. Milky Bar Kid. The Rhinestone Cowboy, Glenn Campbell. I went to see him on his farewell tour, near the end with his dementia. He was wonderful, he never missed a word. And to look at him, you'd never know. The only thing was he had to leave the stage for a rest now and again. 3 of his kids were in his band. I mean, it was a privilege to be there. Such a cruel disease, man. All the stuff we get in and we pass on, and you wonder how much history and misery there's been. Very depressing if you let it get to you. To the place I belong. Brian always used to say that I had a singing voice that could stop traffic. I realise now that Alan's mum was just going through the change. I mean, and given he had no children, Linda was probably everything she'd been missing, you know. Perhaps I'd been selfish. I could have dealt with it a bit more sympathetically, but you can't go back. I mean, I did try, but Alan totally blanked us. So the book was closed, and despite her tantrums, I sent Linda to boarding school in Durham. Only half an hour away. I mean, I saw her every weekend and holidays. I didn't consider that I was being a bad mother, but perhaps, well, I could have played it differently, couldn't I? Having said that, though, she's turned into a beautiful young lady and was now at university living her own life. Not estranged, but the situation just underpinned that I had only been looking after her for a little while. Mine, but not my property. And that was extremely difficult to deal with. Even every time I speak to her, I see that 3-year-old making that sandcastle with Brian on Whitley Bay Beach. Seems so long ago, as if it happened to somebody else. Well, living on my own was very lonely. So I went out as much as I could, socialising with my friends. One night I was waiting in the lounge of a hotel, waiting for one of the girls to come in from work, turning up, and I bumped into Terry, a chief inspector in the traffic department who'd been attending a conference at the hotel. My friend sent a message to say that she was stuck for a babysitter, so I was stuck with Terry. Yes, married, in his late 40s, steel grey eyes, grey hair. No, it was steel grey hair, actually, and sparkling blue eyes that gave him the flavour, I know, of Paul Newman. He didn't give me any pat or chat up. He didn't have to. I was diving headlong into those eyes. And it wasn't the drink. There was no hard look. Wife doesn't understand him or anything like that. And before I know, we'd booked a room. He was wonderful. And I felt 20 again. And again, I was being selfish. But that night, it led to another and another, and ended up in a 6-month affair. I also over discreet, but somehow, someone must have seen him and give me like that familiar touch, or do you know what I mean? And something before, I don't know, a little bit of a touch and a feel. But it went round the station like wildfire. We were up in front of the chief super. We were up in front of the chief super, and Terry was moved to a God-forbidden post, and I was put back into uniform as our penances. Okay, what I did was wrong. But when I thought of that deputy chief and the chief of crime physically fighting over a press officer in the command block and nothing happened to them, it just shows what double standards mind were being applied. And going back into uniform was a shock. Having to work 3 shifts, including nights. Long gone with the cosy days with the office with the policewomen being butted up by the bosses. Come back on, all is forgiven. A lot of the men were really laying on the sexist stuff as well, leaving porno mags around, rubbing up against us, apologising profusely with the lecherous grin. I hated it. The job had changed. And it was brought home to me brutally when I complained to my section sergeant. He just looked at his stony face and he said, "Hey, you tarts wanted equality. Now you've got it. And if you don't like it, you know what to do." My reputation, well, I was a slag. And my chances of promotion, blown. It was time to take stock. I put up with it for a few weeks, but became so low, decided I should leave. I'd stopped singing in the band, and I also, to my regret, going to church. You know what, plan all you like, but events do dictate your life. And it happened to me when I was chasing after a flasher in the park. He was on a bike, and I'd been detailed to keep observations as he had been very active. I only caught him because he had to slow down to avoid hitting a woman with a pram, and we both went to the ground with a clatter. Oh, God. 2 joggers helped. They pinned him down. The man was convicted of several indecent assaults and given 6 months. I was dead chuffed, and the magistrates commended us for my actions. I thought, this is it. I'll get back to CID. No such luck, though. In the fall, I'd badly injured me right knee. That was it. I was on the sick. Instructed to visit the police surgeon. One look at my knee, and he decided I'd never be properly fit for full police duties again. And without consultation or reservation, I was required to retire on a medical pension. It was as if all the work I'd put in was for nothing, and I became very, very bitter. The old force would have found a place for me, but the new force didn't give 2 monkeys. I was just a number. The only blessing is they didn't tattoo it on my arm. Medical pension was okay, but I needed better security. Earlier on, when in the domestic abuse department, I'd been asked by Frank, a local solicitor, to go out with him, but I'd refused. But these were desperate times. So I rang him, and he offered to take us out a couple of days a week, more or less, assessing statements and to witness interviews. Frank was in his 50s, he was a nice guy, but I didn't really fancy him. He'd been widowed for years, and he'd been looking for a partner up the market contact. He'd been looking for a partner in upmarket contact magazines without success. Now, however, as the time went by, we kind of drifted together with the odd drink and a meal out. I felt comfortable with him, so I agreed to go on holiday to Madeira. And it was wonderful. And then on the last night, he produced a ring and asked us to marry him. A shock. And I said, I'll think about it once we arrive back home and I'm away from the sangria. On the plane, I mulled and mulled, I was thinking about it. Oh God, I thought, sod it, yes. And I kissed him on the cheek as he dozed. I was happy. We planned a quick ceremony at the Civic Centre and he put an offer on the house in Darras Hall. Linda was happy for us and it brought us all closer together. But fate, bloody fate, because Frank was in his second adolescence and he and his solicitor pals were motorcycle fiends. Well, at the weekends, they would don the leathers, they'd go convoy, burning up the rubber, and a week before the marriage, he didn't return. They'd had a good spin and they went down the military road and a taxi was coming in the opposite direction on the wrong side of the road. Couldn't believe it. Police said he wouldn't have known what hit him like. I was so angry. 55-year-old man on a stupid bloody motorcycle, it's ridiculous. And the taxi driver was fined £300 and banned for 12 months. Well, we all know taxi drivers can do what they like, don't we? Second bout of grief, well, that was just as painful as the first. And I decided there was never going to be a third. His partners kept us on for a while, mind. But it wasn't the same. So I left to look for some solitude into whatever life I had left. Linda was married to Don. And with a law degree, she'd established herself a small marketing company in Leeds. Together, they're very comfortable, mind. And she sends us a cheque every so often. I visit maybe twice a year. And they really look after us. But I always feel like I'm in the way. So, I keep mainly in touch by phone. They don't want children and that's, well, you know, that's their prerogative, but who am I to comment? Except, you know, it would have been nice to have grandbairns to cuddle and buy special presents for. And like they say, the years flash by and the older I get, the faster they come. But it has to be, it's had its compensations. I've become a professional joiner. The Women's Institute, yoga, church choir. I'll volunteer for any charity and I'll shake the tin on Northumberland Street. And I was selected to do the last census. That really shook us. The number of old people living on their own who wanted to give me a cuppa and a custard cream. Oh man. There's thousands of lonely people out there. And I'm not one of them. I'll speak to anyone. And I see a group of girlfriends at least twice a month for a drink and a meal. And I'm seriously considering joining the Bowls Club. But the money Linda sends, along with my pension, keeps us afloat. And I'm able to feed me 3 Siamese cats on the best liver. Come back, Anne. All is forgiven. I think she'd be proud of us. You see, what you've done, Sergeant Gordon Embley Watson, you've stirred up some memories. And whatever else I might have said, I must thank you and your NAPO card for that. But yeah. There's a number on the back. Well, I wonder if we should keep this adventure going. Hang on a minute. Oh, hello. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for a Peter Watson. Oh, it is. Oh, I'm so pleased. Look, I'm sorry if this sounds a bit jumbled, but my name's Marie Hanson. And I work in the charity shop on the High Street. Charity Express. Yes, that's it. Oh, well, your wife brought the bag in. No problem. Well, no, it's just I've found an old wallet in the lining of the jacket with some personal things. Yes. And actually there's a photograph of you and your granddad, George Watson. Well, I knew him when I was a policewoman on the force a very long time ago. Yes, he was. He was a lovely man. I thought it would be a shame if you didn't have these things returned. That's great. Oh, yes, I'll put them in an envelope for you. Yes, you can call any time for them. We're open between 10 and 4 every weekday. I understand, yes. He must be a great miss. No thanks are needed. And I look forward to meeting you. Okay. Bye-bye. Sounds like his photograph. Nice guy. Oh, Charity Express. Oh, hello, pet. Oh, where are you? Oh, well, I'm fine, apart from a couple of nasty corns. I'm sleeping with them every night, so they're softening up with the plasters. Oh, you what? Oh, that's wonderful, darling. Oh, my goodness, that's absolutely fantastic. Oh, you and Don must be absolutely over the moon. What wonderful news. And do you know when? Well, I know it seems a long way off, pet, but you know, you need to look after yourself. Oh, Linda, I'm so proud of you, pet. I'm just so happy for you and Don. Oh, God bless you, love. God bless. Yes, I'll see you later. Can't believe it. Oh, at her age, she's going to make us a grandma. Oh, there we go. Look, Brian and her making sandy pots on Whitley Bay Beach. Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together.
Thank you. Good night. Bloody ridiculous. What is all this? Would I take a cheque? Just like a bloody group of no-hopers. They're pathetic. Some menopausal widow who's just got shot of her husband, partner, friend, whatever they call it these days. She thinks she's had a sign. The cat's been meowing at his pipe and slippers or something, and she's convinced he's out there trying to communicate. So she decides to give up selling Tupperware, and she starts a Minds and Bodies convention, self-help group. They fight to have it in their different living rooms. Egos break out, and suddenly there's a couple hours spare at the local Rechabite hall after judo class. Hour specific. 200 cash. Not a problem, said chairwoman, whatever she's called, Jennifer. You can call me Jen. Full of herself. Face like a prune and body to match. She looked as if she'd stuffed bakery hankies in bra. Them smoky coloured glasses and a perm so tight she looked like the springs in bloody mattress. Yes, not a problem. But it's the first time I've ever had to go around the audience for a whip round. What a bunch. When I looked round, I thought I really had connected with living dead, because most of them looked as if they'd been dug up. I was tempted to ask them if ground had been cold this morning. Mugs. But it's a living, and if it gives them comfort, you know. Who am I to put brakes on gravy train? We're all on it to same place anyway, so why shouldn't I go around Terminus and collect fares, aren't we? They all fall into a pattern. Few trestle tables. They bring their own food. They're You know, they have a meeting congratulating themselves on chicken pie and mushrooms and new potatoes. This lot went bananas over one of them, Janet, who brought in baked Alaska. I was beginning to wonder if they were going to give out Michelin stars. Mind, Janet looked as if she'd been reared on baked Alaskas. What you might term kindly sturdy. She had the perfect proportions to model front bows a galleon. I could hardly get Alaska out me bridge work when Jennifer got up and rang bell for attention. I've got to admit they were very disciplined. All sat up as if they'd been injected with Gorilla Glue. Jennifer went on to welcome me. And to be fair, she had done her own work, referring to Late Night Forum on the Afterlife, which were recorded several years ago when I appeared with Uri Geller. Then instead of letting me get on with it, she stopped in her tracks when one of the living dead reminded her they hadn't sold any bloody raffle tickets. So we had the rigmarole of Jennifer nominating one of them to go round with tickets while they all scraped in handbags for change. That took at least 10 minutes. But it gave me respite to suck the baked Alaska from back teeth. Of course, Muggins here were offered my raffle ticket and I graciously bought a dozen with a 20 pence piece. And once it's settled, I were introduced again. So, I better get on with it and tell you who I am and what I do. Basically, I am a freelance, free spirit, grief counsellor. I put people's minds at rest once they, lose somebody. Even cats and dogs. Everybody needs a little bit of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, there's something beyond grave. And I give them that hope. I come from a place called Ledson Look in Yorkshire. A little coal mining village, and I got under the stage name Madam Ida Francesca. Well, Betty Thompson don't have same ring, does it? And it were the Renaissance name, that does offer up a little bit of mystery and magic. I'm 63, widowed. 10 years ago, when Tommy died in pit, a fall of stone so common. And I never did get fancy to marry again. I couldn't have kids. I had a couple of miscarriages and I knew what my lot was. So I decided to go college and I studied for a psychology degree and I came out with a 2-2. What waste of time. What bloody hell was I going to do with it? So you're wondering how I got into this game? Well, I saw a woman called Doris Stokes on telly, and I were amazed how she got away with it. And it actually, it had me enthralled. I mean, the question she were asking, is there anybody out there? And does name John mean something? And when half a dozen jumped up out the seats, then she began tapping her chest and saying, the chest, lovey, the chest. And one of them would shout out, Yeah, it were an heart attack! Then she went on to say, you know, John were fine, he were having a good time and looked forward to meeting rest of family. She covered breast cancer, accidents, tumours, the lot. And every time they were willing taker and audience wanting closure. And here was Doris, a complete fraud, to give it to her. Jesus Christ, I thought. This be money for old rope. I mean, I'm cynical bastard because obviously life has given me nothing but bad luck and hard times, so I thought, I'm going to get a bit back. If Doris can make healthy living, well, why shouldn't I? And if people think I'm helping them, then why not? Because it's, you know, it's giving them help, isn't it? And I keep my Yorkshire accent because, well, sounds comforting and homely. Well, it goes along these lines normally. I like to see the whites of everyone's eyes, please. Emotional contact is vital. It gets channels flowing and portals opened. Portals which once develop break down all boundaries which prevent our minds and bodies achieving affinity. This often gets a few whisperings and I can immediately identify the sheep from foxes. There's always one who'll try and chop my legs off with awkward question. Couple in middle row begin write down things on piece of paper and pass it along the line. So predictable. I then tell them a little bit about myself. And I shave a few years off the age, you know. Sometimes I say I'm 53, other times a little younger. Depends how I feel. When I do, I hear her muttering, and then I tell them, you know, age is just number. And I press on and say, I'm 63, but all I want is for them to open up those channels that have been blocking with anxiety and grief before they make any judgment. I go on to say that they may wonder where my name come from. And tonight, the one who were muttering and making pencil notes shouted out, yeah, bastards. What she didn't realise were earlier that evening, whilst consuming the chicken and mushroom pie, I overheard Jennifer bragging about how she got tickets for Strictly Come Dancing. So I snapped back and I said, thank you, Teresa. I hope you enjoy Strictly next week. She was shocked. And I see the faces of wonderment in audience. As her friend gave her a stab with elbow, Teresa was shocked and asked, how I knew all that? But I just smiled knowingly and said, open your portals. I have several ways of entering their world. By far most effective is following story, which has elements of truth and dramatic licence. I ask for lights to be dimmed and light a black candle, which I carry in handbag, and I place it on table. It's all very dramatic, but that's what they expect. It always pays to set right atmosphere. And in the dark gloom, there's always a certain amount of flatulence from chicken pie. Which means, you know, they feel comfortable. If they happen to open just a few cubic yards of marsh gas. Like I say, stories pick and mix, but it always gets them going, and tonight were no exception. when my grandmother died, we moved to village to a large tenement house in poor part of Leeds. As a little girl, I loved to explore the rooms, playing pretend games. But attic door were locked, and I were forbidden to go in there. But I used to look through keyhole. And I could hear squeaking. Squeak. 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 Then one day, I were peeping and I were pressing against the door. A key fell. And I managed to get it from under gap in the door with my little hand. Oh, I couldn't resist it. I put key in lock. And I opened door. My heart were beating fast. And I entered the room which were bathed in bright warm light as it wrapped its arms round me. It took a while to adjust to brightness. And then in corner sat an old woman on rocking chair. She was gently rocking back and forward. Squeak. 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 A kindly face smiling at me. Amazingly, I weren't frightened in the least. In fact, quite reverse. The room was beautiful. No danger, just love. At this point, I usually have them. And tonight, I had them in palm of my hand. There were total silence. And to be honest, the atmosphere, you could call it with a knife. Then one of them broke silence and asked a stupid question. And that got right on bloody tits. But I let her. And instead of suspending a stupid belief, she asked obvious. If door had been locked in years, our old woman sitting in rocking chair? And said it sounded like psycho. A small chuckle went round the room. And I gave him my best teeth and eyes job. And I told them, if they don't want to hear, I might as well blow my candle out and go home. Jennifer quickly interjected and apologised profusely, speaking sternly, and warned that there were going to be a meeting of the inner committee later to discuss consequences. This set up an all different conversation between Jennifer and them, as woman who made comment just said, oh, they were just trying to get rid of scepticism. I realised it were falling away from me, so I interjected and asked the irritant if she believed in God. She said she didn't know, so I asked her if she would like there to be one. And she said, probably yes, but wondered why if there was, he was horrible and allowed wars and accidents to happen. So in a way, I were back in my territory. In a way. So I asked if they believed in devil. And the response were interesting. One of them quite cleverly said that she thought they were good and evil in people's hearts. So I pulled Ace out my sleeve. I said to him, well, ladies, add an O to God and take the D off devil, and there you have it. The power of both is within us all. Because we all have that little voice that guides us. And that is the voice that guides me constantly. How often do you think of a friend or a relative and within seconds telephone goes or knock on door? So how often does this happen? What is it you tune into? I mean, how do radio waves or pictures come through boxing corner or living room? Are thoughts just like radio waves? And if so, how far do they travel? What distance and time do they cover? For instance, if we could travel fast enough or far enough, could we hear Nelson's last words in the Battle of Trafalgar? There are many things in the world that we accept as normal, yet don't understand. So my feelings and intuitions are based on that little voice. You all have it, all of you. So who is to say same little voice of dead remain in the ether? I don't know answer to any of this, ladies. But I've opened up my mind to every possibility, and it gives me a whole new dimension which sets me free. That shuts them up. So I continue with my tale. It were if I'd known a lady in chair all my life. Her smile so sweet and gentle, and eyes gave me nothing but love, not one word. And I felt drawn to her, as if a silken thread. She held out her hand in slow motion like a dream, but so real. Her hand was soft and warm as she looked into my eyes. She squeezed it tight, and suddenly the blazing light went out. She were gone. The room were cold and unforgiving. But I weren't frightened. Surge went through me, as if being charged by some invisible force. Then I felt something in my hand. And upon opening, I found I were clutching this. And when I showed it to Mother, she nearly fainted because it belonged to her great-grandmother, Ida Francesca, and being lost many years before. She showed me an old photograph of wearing it. And yes, you've guessed it. The lady in photograph, well, lady in rocking chair. It were her. I knew that little voice had become a big voice, and I have listened ever since. Lapis lazuli. These stones were regarded as having powers of protection in the afterlife by Egyptians, and often found in amulets and other jewellery, especially in Valley of Pharaohs. Family history has it that Ida Francesca were part of a group who discovered Tutankhamun, and she were given it by Howard Carter himself. Of course there's cursed too, but all I can say is it's kept me safe. And that is why I go under my ancestor's name. I can't explain experiencing attic. Did I hallucinate? I mean, it's possible. And where did it come from? And just to show you, I aren't beyond too much gin. At this point, I pass photograph round audience. Once I passed it round, I had the hook, line and sinker. Oh, it were perfect. You could almost smell tension and anticipation. Well, along with chicken pie, that lingered all night. And actually still clinging to me clothes. Then I go into me heavy breathing and my eyes flickering and the odd growl. I begin to laugh. And I tell them, I'm getting name. It's Irene. Irene's name from 40s. There's always either an Irene or Margaret in audience. And sure enough, one stood up. You could see the strain on her face when I asked her if that were her name. And she said, yeah. It was like taking candy off baby. I asked if she had anything that might help me, make connection, and she took fountain pen out of handbag. I asked her to come toward me. Give me a pen. It was an old Parker with a gold nib, obviously man's pen. It took a few words for her to tell me that the man in question were a beautiful writer. I mean, it were obvious pen belonged to father or husband. So she blurted out, it were her father, and begins to sob. Money for old rope. I've got all of them at this point. So I comfort her and I tell her, he's fine and he's happy and he's very proud of you. So, on a roll, I know she'll tell me anything I want. I tell her that once the portal's opened, others will try and come through. So I tell her that her father says there's something he wants to try and resolve and that he wants to make it right by her. At that, she began to cry. And I know I'm on to win her. She tells me it's about her mother. And it come tumbling out that she left the family when she was a little girl. She was sobbing hard at this point. And I were getting concerned, so I took her in my arms and I told her that he always loved her. And he were always looking over her. The way she looked at me, it gave me a shiver, and that had never happened to me before. So I brought her to close. I handed her fountain pen back and told the hairy old chestnut that her father was a lovely man and at peace. She wiped her eyes and said a great weight had been lifted. She kissed me and crowds applauded. Worked a treat. But I couldn't explain that shiver. And then I realised I still had stone in my hand. It seemed to become very warm. Far warmer than usual, so I put it in pocket and I just shrugged it off. But for the first time, I wondered if what I was doing were right. I mean, being able to give Irene some comfort, it can't be bad, surely. Yeah, I make some money, but they get peace of mind. And I always finish on a quote from Frederick the Great. Beautiful it is to understand and know that the thought did never yet die. For she who were honest with her existence has always meaning for us, be she queen or peasant. I find it a good one to flummox them as I gather up my things and get out. Only tonight, Jennifer insisted I stayed for a raffle. I couldn't win. And I didn't win raffle either. Oh dear. I am whacked. And I don't feel so good. Tonight, you know, it really took it out of me. And that shiver. That shiver was like a goose walked over me grave. Oh, bloody hell. Oh, bloody hell, it's red hot. Christ, what's happening? It's burning. It's catching fire. It's burning up. The smoke. I can't breathe. Oh, I must get out. I must get out. I must get out. Help me, somebody. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are together with Libby Walker.
Clear something up. I'm not Miranda. John Wilkinson. And I've done something a little bit different tonight. Instead of these four, right? I've memorised mine. Ever hell. I can't memorise a poem. Right. I just want to wake you up. Because it's past my bedtime. It's normally 9 o'clock. I don't understand the world anymore. I mean, Hitler couldn't bomb us into submission, yet a disease we can't see and has been passed on to us as a gift by that treasured and protected species bats from China has brought the world to its knees, taken millions of precious lives and created anger, grief and misery. It makes you realise that when some crackpot leaders bedecked in Mickey Mouse medals or some skinny backpacked 20-year-old with a dirty bomb looking for eternity presses the thermonuclear button and all human life is evaporated, those unseen virus bastards will be laughing like the potato smash adverts. As a woman of a certain age, I think I've probably seen the best of it. And yet I still don't understand why aeroplanes fly and ships weighing hundreds of tons don't sink. And I'm not thick. So I just tag along behind the relentless technology juggernaut with wide eyes and fingers crossed that one morning I don't wake up to find my bank account's being transferred to Nigeria. I can do emails, but once the computer begins to throw up messages in code, I develop a worry cloud and blanket. I still hanker after Morris Thousands and Austin A40s when you could sit on the front window to set the carburettor, or throw a couple of fresh eggs into the radiator to stop it leaking. I still wonder at those brave guys who went to the moon on what was probably an updated cat's whisker, Amstrad, artificial intelligent, apps for apps, cyborg porn, and robots. Oh, someone knows about the cyborg porn. And robots that can hoover your living room and return to the plug demanding to be recharged. Sex has changed, and now there are a myriad of genders to embrace. Kids being persuaded to become transgenders, ridiculous unisex toilets, and we're constipated with information as Twitter, Facebook and Instagram rule our lives. Hang on, I've got a sore throat. There's so much crap on the ether now that lies and misinformation are interbreeding with truths and partial truths, eradicating respect, loyalty, common sense and family values, which have been consigned to the dustbin. But wouldn't it be nice if all those better qualities were actually recycled? Global warming's destroying the ozone layer, the Arctic's melting, sea levels are rising, and rainforests being decimated so we can have nice supple aloe vera skin. Plastic covered islands, kids in Africa with flies breeding in their nostrils, and every animal, fish or fowl facing extinction. Wars laying waste to millions of lives, fear and anger like rising damp, yet we still plunder the earth and blunder on. All of this is part of a stream of consciousness as I look out my front room window, locked into the reality, but locked out of life. And after those prognostications, I'm probably being pegged as a miserable old biddy. Well, I'm not actually, because I'm just reflecting on things as my mind goes into a sort of refragging mode, slotting memories, observations, information and attitudes into position kind of naturally, and the reason, quite frankly, is this lockdown virus. You see, doctors and government reckon that at my age with various medical problems, I'm vulnerable to snuffing it. So I have to be shielded. Well, I've been on my own in the house for over 3 months now with only the television and telephone for company. And I never did get my computer on FaceTime. So the only contact I have is with my cousin Arnold who lives in Melbourne, and that costs a fortune. So it's only 1 call a month. Of course, I can order food and toilet rolls from the co-op, which are delivered at distance by various couriers in masks. But the cheeky buggers ask us for me date of birth every time I order a bottle of gin. It's a mother's ruin thing, because I never married and I haven't regretted a thing. So I'm not a miserable old sod. I know exactly who and where I am, and I love it. It's all down to routine and open bowels, 7 to 7. On the dot, in a day which is ordered by the sights and sounds I see through my front room window. You'd think our street was a quiet suburban backwater, but it's anything but. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a peeping Tom with a set of German submarine binoculars or on neighbourhood watch, but I love observing people, animals, birds, fauna and flora. I never cease to be amazed or disgusted by human nature. It's like peering into a large inhabited fish tank, and it's fascinating. Like the elderly lady at number 6 on the left diagonal to me. She's a sort of sucking loach taking the algae off the glass. Every day she's out there at the crack of dawn pampering her 10x3 lawn. It's trimmed and cosseted to distraction. It's a fetish. She gets on her hands and knees, goodness knows what she's doing, maybe communicating with the worms. Because all you can see is her perm bobbing up and down behind the lower wall. My mind's going somewhere else. Pride of place, either side of the door are 2 large pots containing box hedge cut and trimmed with a tiny pair of scissors. Immaculate, just like Mrs. Number 6. Always dressed to the nines. Full makeup, even from a distance. Almost geisha girl-esque. She looks as if she's jumped off the front of a 1950s woman own. I've never seen a man of any description go into a house, and the only real guy I've ever witnessed occasionally is the one in the high-vis jacket who comes in the summer to give a fabulous hanging basket. That's not a euphemism. Hanging basket of blooms, a squirt or two from his Ghostbusters backpack. I often see her standing in the front room behind a potted Christmas cactus looking at the street. It'd be great to know what she was observing about me. Female friends come and go intermittently, all well coiffed and without masks, I must add. So I wonder if they've all had their jabs. Oh, I nearly forgot. In the fine weather, she sits on a folding up chair in the postage stamp of a garden, knitting and following the sun around. But only in the mornings, because our house is in cold shadow after 12. I'm distracted. The front bell went, and there was an Amazon delivery lady all masked up and at a distance, staggering under a huge cardboard box, which could have contained an MDF coffin the size of it. I told her, sorry, no love, you cannot leave it here. Her eyes looked angry, and I swear her tattoos twitched. But I'm sick of taking stuff in, and I suppose that brings out my dark side. I mean, come on, you order a set of placemats and they come wrapped like the crown jewels in a box that's probably taken out 2 ashtrays. Upon reflection, I should have suggested she take it to her at number 6. It would have been interesting to see her reaction. As it is, she threw it in the back of her white van and screamed off, leaving half an inch of rubber tread on the pavement. They're cracking the pavement to bits, these vans, and what's the council doing about it? Sorry, pet, we're all working from home. I'll put it on the list. Pet! I'm nobody's pet. And I never have been. But that's a whole different story, and I don't intend to go down that road. Sorry. One of the joys of window watching are the birds, which are fascinating, is to swoop into the briar hedge without getting caught or damaging themselves like lasers to pick off whatever bugs they feast on. There's a regular pair of bullfinches who are obviously a couple, and they stay some time for up to 5 minutes. Blue tits are the most frequent, darting in, pecking what they need, then they're off. No hanging about. They're so alert, and with good reason, because occasionally a murder of crows come to visit the street and all hell lets loose. They cause havoc in the bird community. You see them communicating with each other as they scour and scoff everything edible in sight. There's also a resident robin who sits proudly on one of the fence posts and demands attention with his red breast puffed out. And woe betide any interloper. He'd chase them off without ceremony. Such a small bundle of feathers. Mid-afternoon, a wren will appear, darting here and there like a mayfly in the hedge, but never for long. And unlike the robin, he's a secretive individual, but very certain and self-assured. Of course, as the pigeons, a pair nest in the 60-foot overhanging conker tree outside the house, constantly cover everything in shit. The beech hedge is wonderful, cover for a beautiful Siamese cat which crouches silently, hoping in one corner, looking up to the noisy bastards, who seem to be taking the mickey out of everything and everybody. But despite the cat's sterling effort, it hasn't nabbed one yet. But I live in hope to see a few tail feathers and blood on the path. The tree's just coming into bloom, and very soon it'll be raining conkers, and we're talking hundreds. On a windy night you can hear them thudding onto the neighbour's car parked directly underneath. And what with that and the shit, I don't know why he bothers. The neighbours on one side of a canny couple with 2 young boys, and they're cycling potty, the lot of them. Early morning before school, they're out in their gear. Crash helmets and wet weathers, and riding convoy round the adjacent streets, then into the back garden to service the bikes. And this is before school begins. Then upon return, late afternoon, it's the same performance. They must be fit as hell with calf muscles like cricket balls, but they always give a nice smile and wave. Mister knocked on the door at the beginning of lockdown, offered to get us me shopping. I said I was fine with the co-op, but I thanked him for his thoughtful gesture, and I wouldn't hesitate to take him up on his offer if needed. Unfortunately, the neighbour on the other side is most unpleasant and a pain in the arse. A university lecturer with an attitude to match. Her house is like a pigsty from the outside, so it makes me wonder what it must be like inside. As an example, a drain pipe's only reach halfway down, so any water from the roof runs down the walls. At the rear, she's got a large plywood extension set out from where the back door was, and I was informed by a workman who had the bravery to enter some months ago that it was to house a freezer. The yard is filled with bricks, rubble and broken pots, 3 sets of ladders, which make the area not only a health hazard but a bloody security risk. Her manner is very brusque when she dares to speak, but if I ever encounter her in the communal area at the front, she gives an uncomfortable stare as if I was invading her personal space. There's certainly a flavour of a female Norman Bates about her. But she doesn't give me any aggravation, but I always take strides to avoid her whenever possible because of the vibes. Our house is large and rambling with the windows cracked, dirty nets. Paint peeling, the garden overrun, and one can imagine that one day something really unpleasant will be unearthed there. Strangely enough, me days are full what with making the bed, washing and ironing, preparing and making meals. It's also been an opportunity to reassess me decor. I had several old pots of paint, so I mixed it all up as a Frankenstein concoction and repainted the kitchen and laundry areas. The colours come out as pink magnolia with a hint of elephant's breath. Yes, elephant's breath. It was one of them farrow and ball tins I had left over. So once I've got the day mapped out, I'll have a chocolate biscuit and a cup of tea and sit and watch the world go by. There's a man lives further up who takes his sausage dog for a walk about 10 times a day. He's very tall and the dog's so small it looks like a rat on wheels. He walks with an arrogance, the man, not the dog. That seems to be well beyond his class, and by that I mean he looks like a retired bin man but walks like a field marshal, so he's obviously proud of something. However, there's a downside. I, along with 1 or 2 others in the street, get me eggs delivered in the early hours by a farmer from Northumberland. Good quality and a great old-fashioned thing to embrace. But recently, the farmer telephoned me to say that he suspected our dog walker was stealing some from the steps. So, I've been getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, keeping Toot from the bedroom window to see if I catch him. But unfortunately, neither he nor his sausage dog have put a foot wrong at the moment. That is presuming the sausage dog's got feet. Patience is a virtue, and if he's at it, I'll catch him, but what I'll actually do is in the lap of the gods. I do venture out into the front on occasions when the weather's fine. A couple of weeks ago I was sorting out the window box, taking old dwarf narcissi bulbs out and prepping it for its annual trailing geranium feast. As I lifted my head over the hedge, a young guy about 22 on a bike with a knapsack on his back slowly rode past. There was a pannier on the front of the bike which actually looked as if it was homemade. The whole ensemble, he and the bike, looked like a monkey on a mangle. Anyhow, he seemed very interested in the houses and he slowly meandered up the street and then turned down the back lane, so I assumed he was looking for odd bits of scrap or a skip diver, skydiver. I'm ready for me bed. That was until about 10 minutes later. I was at the window scanning some junk mail on funerals when I saw him again. It looked odd, so I watched him ride up the street again, back down, then suddenly he stopped, jumped off his bike, dived into the path opposite, grabbed a kiddie's bike, then back onto his and off like a linty. It was done in seconds. I didn't have a chance to do anything about it. I rang the police, but all I got was a very bored voice, which I couldn't determine was male or female. We'll look into it when we have the resources. He or she wasn't interested, and while I should have been shocked, I wasn't, because I haven't seen a copper on our street for years. Because of being locked in and shielding, I never got the chance to speak to the people opposite either, and some poor kid's bike will now be dubbed in for drugs, I suppose. And he looked a bit like a student. I don't spend my life looking out the window though. In the afternoons, after I've had my bowl of soup and a packet of crisps, I might sit and watch old reruns of Law and Order, the original American series, which is absolutely spot on compared to the British version, streets ahead. Ours is just a poor relation. Often I'll put the computer on YouTube Music and listen to country and western. Alan Jackson, one of my favourites. I just sit back in my armchair, close my eyes and drift up for 20-minute Churchill naps. The other day I was disturbed by a diddy guy at the front door trying to persuade me that my chimney was about to fall because the haunch needed cementing. I noticed that his two oppos were at the doors in the street giving the same slaver. I told him my haunches are fine. And if I ever had a problem, I was quite capable of getting my friend's husband, a marine engineer, to fix it. These people must think I've just jumped out the trees. The way he looked at me, I knew he knew I knew. I should have told him that not long ago. I was driving a taxi in the town, so a couple of street hustlers were no problem, and I still know where to drive me knee when I have to. These bastards going round conning old folk, telling them their roofs and gutters need fixing. They slap on a bit of cement and then start putting the pressure on for hundreds of pounds, often taking us old biddies to the bank. Not this old biddy. Nasty, the only thing lowers taking money off the dead. So when I go, I don't want any fancy coffin with brass fitments, which have probably come off 10 previous funerals. Everything's rip-off these days, and I suspect funeral directors are right near the top of the list. Yeah. An ambulance came to number 8 on Sunday afternoon, just as I was watching Columbo. There was certainly a bit of commotion in the street as I saw a young woman being stretchered out on the house opposite, the same one as the stolen kiddie's bike. Her husband climbed into the ambulance holding her hand, and it went off with his hee-haw going. I never did establish the problem, but I've seen a woman come out the house with a young baby, so putting 2 and 2 together, it seems pretty obvious. But you wonder if it was touch and go. I'm afraid that's the way my mind works. Then a week past Thursday, I was awoken at 7 in the morning with flashing lights and loud beeping. Looking through the bedroom window in the buff, I saw an army of council workers in those high-vis jackets jumping off a huge wagon with shovels and steaming tarmac. They started digging the road up and the bell rang, so I hastily put on a pair of knickers and a dressing gown. And I went to the door where one of the workmen told me not to worry, but there was a gas leak, so I should be prepared to evacuate. I then looked beyond him, and to me horror saw the woman at number 6 standing in the door in her dressing gown, and when she saw me, she quickly shut the door. Just about everyone was out at their doors in some sort of night attire, being given the same message. As it turned out, it was a complete false alarm. The gas pipes were fine, but number 5 had a large fish pond in the rear garden, which had become stagnant through lack of maintenance. And marsh gas from rotten vegetation was seeping out through the wall into the back lane, so the panic was off. But now we have a road which is all lumps and bumps where they patched it up with soft tarmac, which has sunk to making the potholes even worse. There's always something going on outside because it's a rat run, and the number of heavy vehicles is ridiculous, mainly because of the park on either side, and there's no legal restrictions, but particularly because of the huge trees either side which almost form a canopy over the road. They're beautiful, and most of them have a tree preservation order on them, but the roots are tearing the backside out the path and road, and some must be the original trees. Cows scratched their backs on long before the street was a twinkle in the planner's eyes. They tower well above the houses, and one has to wonder what heave damage they're doing to the foundations. Strange, isn't it? We value trees above house value, and the council will fight tooth and nail to preserve them, yet totally ignore the social needs of the community. Crackers. Anyway, I digress. But the following little anecdote perhaps underpins the danger that lurks outside my front door. I was in the bedroom watering my spider and busy lizzie plants on the windowsill when I saw 3 young schoolgirls on their way to educational enlightenment. At the same time, a man with a briefcase came from number 10, obviously heading to work. He must have pressed his car key because a Volvo parked several yards away flashed its lights to signal it was ready for the off. Almost simultaneously, there was an almost human screeching noise, and within seconds I saw a huge tree lurch forward. Simultaneously, the 3 girls had the presence of mind to run in the right direction as the tree came crashing down, narrowly missing them. It seemed to swing away from them as if some spirit in the tree was guiding it, but it flattened the Volvo completely. The owner was standing a couple of yards away, transfixed in terror. The whole thing was surreal and over in seconds, and from the position of the tree, if it had fallen in a direct line, not only would it have taken the 3 girls out, but certainly would have demolished the front of the house opposite. Obviously, it brought the neighbourhood out with their camera phones. The press arrived, and within an hour the council had their buzzsaws in operation. So by the time I was watering the Christmas cactus in the front room, all that was left was a pile of sawdust. It all goes on. Postmen, flyers by the core for double glazing, garden tidying, young lads just out of prison attempting to sell wash leathers, some of them pleasant enough, others extremely aggressive. Bin men who wake everyone up at 7 in the morning, leave the bins half broken in the middle of the road. Delivery after delivery, argument after argument as their vans and lorries block the road and 2 houses reefed in scaffolding having their roofs replaced. It's pound to a penny that if they need doing properly, the rest of the street needs it as well as they were built at the same time. I've never seen a hearse, but the nearest to it was a female caller who stood at the gate with an elderly well-dressed gentleman leaning on a silver-topped dog's head walking stick. Both were wearing the statutory masks and she apologised for the intrusion, but she said her father would like a word. Well, it turned out his name was Christopher Greenfield Chandon, who was 89 and diagnosed with terminal cancer. The point being, he travelled up from Oxford, where he'd been a university lecturer, to visit all the houses he'd lived in before he passed on, and mine was where he'd been born and lived until he was 18 to go to university. I asked him to come in, but they insisted on sticking to the COVID rules. We then had a long conversation about the house, which brought back many happy memories, and he explained his room was the one above the front door. He described it in full detail from the wallpaper to the carpet, but in particular it had a sink in one corner. I'd often wondered what the drain pipe on the wall at the side of this room had been for, and the answer was there facing me. He went on to tell us about his mother baking bread in the range in the kitchen, and the vegetables that grew in the garden during the war. In particular, an apple tree from which she made wonderful crumbles. It was amazing. His memory was as sharp as a pin. But what was even more remarkable was that while the back garden's now paved over, the apple tree still survives and produces scores of lovely apples every year, despite having tree cancer. I told him to wait at the gate, and I returned to the kitchen where I had several apples from that tree which I'd actually picked that week in a bowl. I put them in a Marks and Spencer's bag for life, and I gave them to him. He couldn't believe it, and there were tears in his eyes as he thanked us. His daughter gave us a wonderful smile, and they left happy, but not as happy as me, because that connection just made me realise that everything was good about life, was simple and worthwhile. Being locked down made me realise that looking out was fine, but looking inward, and the tears from that old man and smile from his daughter were what life was all about.
Ladies and gentlemen, John
If you want to get a photograph of the girls. They're going to take a bow. So keep the applause going, please. Well done, you all.